otherwise, God, I gotta go out and buy coffee.
It's a must. I could not start a day without coffee.
In fact, I was gonna boil some pasta and I got rid of all my pans. I don't have a single saucepan in the house. Put my pressure cooker out with the free stuff at the end of the driveway. I'm waiting to see how quickly that gets cooked. And then I've got an aluminum roasting pit for turkeys and stuff that my mother had when I was growing up. She's up there throwing darts at me and giving it up. It's just amazing how much stuff you
Do you think you're gonna be ready to go outside of, on the first?
I'm ready to go now. I mean, I haven't got
Good.
everything out.
Has it cleared out enough yet for you? Yeah.
Well, pretty much. I'm at the point where I've got a guy that's been picking up a lot of stuff on a daily basis for 2 or 3 weeks.
Mhm.
And he came back today to just check on a few things and stuff I told him I was taking with me today. I said, you can have that, you can have that, you can have that. What do you mean? You're taking that? I said, no, I'm not.
I'm good.
I told him I'm done. It just,
Gets to a point you just can't deal with it.
yeah. And I've already overstuffed the house up north.
Mhm.
The stuff I brought up, and I've still got another load to take. That had not been.
No.
One minute.
Hi, guys.
No quorum. Not yet.
Dave, I hear this is your last meeting.
It is last week.
What are you doing?
Moving, Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
Pulling out of town. I still got 2 extra vehicles down here. And figured out the logistics on that yet. I could tow them on my trailer, but I refuse to do that. My truck burns a full tank of fuel when I'm pulling a car. It's just not worth it. I'll figure it out. I get one of the guys that I records with all the time. He says, we'll just throw it on my trailer and I'll tow it up there. And I said, and I'll ride back with you and get the other car. That'll work.
Wait, you saw me coming here, or?
It's already sold and closing Monday.
Really? Wow. How long was it on the market?
It wasn't.
Oh, good.
I sold it to a flipping company, and then I got 6 other people asking me after that, oh, you selling your house? Yeah, it's already sold. My next door neighbor's gonna be selling his sometime in the next 6 or 8 months.
One that does all the woodwork.
He and his girlfriend, or actually his girlfriend is the one that is on the house, bought a new house up on Howard Street.
Oh, they're staying in town. Just
Oh, yeah, they needed, they've been together for 2 years now, or a little more, and, you know, it was funny because the couple of discussions I had with him, they were talking, you know, long-term financial plans and all this other stuff already a year ago.
Mhm.
And he's got twins, and they're teenagers now, so this house, White Street is not big enough.
Yep.
So,
Plus he needs more space for his he has like a full-on
all his
saw, right?
endeavors and everything, oh, yeah, yeah.
Like he does lumbering.
So she sold her house up in Gardner, and they put a substantial, is what I heard, deposit down on a brand new place up on Howard Street.
Good for them.
He's gonna do some more work on the house on Wayne Street and then sell it out. So potentially there'll be 2 houses side by side on the market next spring, which won't be a bad thing.
No?
Thanks. Looking forward to getting up there. Keep saying if I make it that far. Yeah, it has been a lot of fun. Hey, by the way, did you get Bolton passed away?
Yeah. I got a call, that same day from, we don't work together at Simon's.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, I don't know how many years he had at Simon's, but he had 47 on the fire department.
Probably, at least that at Simon's. He was at least that at Simon's.
Yeah.
No funeral, no services.
Yeah, nothing.
That's the way he wanted it.
Yeah, the chief mentioned it to me 2 weeks ago at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, that he was at Leominster Hospital, intubated, and it didn't look good.
Yeah, that's good guy, he's a good guy.
Yeah, when he couldn't go deep sea fishing anymore, that put a crimp in his life.
Mm-hmm.
He used to go, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. No, he went, I think it was 4 times a month, and he always went during the week when it wasn't crowded on the boat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he had his system on figuring when it was the best time, timing the tides and all that stuff.
Of course.
Well,
1 minute before 7:20.
this is something new for us.
This is the first time, yeah, this is the first one I've been to that we didn't have a quorum for.
You said Chris was, you thought he was gonna be here?
I didn't hear anything from Chris or Tom, so I just assumed they were going to be here. I don't think I have it in my notes that they weren't gonna be here. Oh, Jay just joined.
Jake Fuller.
There it is.
He probably heard me.
Not yet, he hasn't joined in yet.
Um,
Still connecting his audio. Evening, Jay.
Sorry, folks.
Not a problem. You were 1 minute away from calling. No quorum.
I'm going to sign on.
All right. We are ready in the booth. Thank you. All right. Good evening. It is 7:20 p.m. on September 26th, and we now have a quorum for the Finance Committee, so I am calling the Finance Committee meeting to order. Apologies for we're getting a little feedback. Apologies for the slight delay, but we are technically in a quorum now. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel and on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page, and will be uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. This meeting is being held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while the option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific agenda item, any item on this agenda, should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This agenda, the following information is provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link below to join the public meeting webinar. This agenda lists all topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken because of these discussions. Not all items listed may be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent allowed by open meeting law. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Are there any announcements for this evening?
Save it for the end or put it in the beginning?
Up to you.
Yeah, I'd just like to announce to the public that this will be my last Finance Committee meeting for the town of Lunenburg. As of Tuesday, October 1st, I will no longer be a property owner in Lunenburg. Will be moving on with my decades-long plan of retiring in northern New Hampshire. Just a note, I will be remaining on Green Communities for a while longer to help them get through the next grant round. Turns out the charter and Mass General Law does allow that. It's been a real great experience for me to give back to the town for the many years that I've put into these meetings and the positions I've held over the years. And if I had it to do over again, I would do it exactly the same. And thank you for all the support I've had over the years and the people that have come to me just because I've had the knowledge and collected the knowledge over the years to help them make decisions for themselves working in town government. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dave, thank you very much for all the service you've done for the town. It's been inspiring to see the amount of work that you've put in this town for the years before I moved here and for the years since I've been here, and all the times that we've worked together on Finance Committee and all the myriad other committees you've been on and boards you've served on. So thank you for the dedication, and certainly wish you the best in northern New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Other announcements, I just have a few quick ones. Today, the food pantry did an official ribbon cutting ceremony to open the newer space at TCP. They've moved out of the kitchen and they've moved into the full cafeteria, so it is officially a grocery store-like atmosphere, able to service a lot more of the public. And Senator Cronin and Reps Kuchmarek and Scarsdale were in attendance as well to hand over a $25,000 check that was earmarked from the governor's budget for FY25. So that will go a long way to helping them as well. Second, the second annual town official meet and greet at Low Places Ranch on 441 Goodrich Street is technically still happening until 8:30 p.m. I was there a little bit earlier this evening. It was not a bad turnout considering the amount of rain that's happening. They have plenty of tents and warm coffee from Smokestack and lots of food donated by all the local area restaurants. So if you're a business owner or just want to get out and see some horses and have some free food, they're open for another hour or so. And lastly, the PTO reached out to me to request, they have updated their products for the coming year and removed a little bit of the sports aspect to it. So they have additional options, which are more strictly along the lines of a Lunenburg theme itself. So sort of just if you'd like to represent Lunenburg rather than specifically a sports team or whatnot, or anything like that, it's sort of just dedicated towards the town itself. Their website can be located by doing a quick Google search for just Lunenburg Blue Knights PTO. It's the top link, and you can search through there. They are doing shipping, I believe, by the early part of November, so Christmas gifts are available. And there's quite a few. I was actually looking through it earlier today. Other than that, that is all I have. Public comment. Is there any public comment from our one public? Seeing none. Any public comment from the committee this evening?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jay.
I just wanted to thank Dave for his years of service, all his time commitment, not just to this committee, but all the other committees that he was involved in, has sat on and contributed to, and his knowledge of the town, and also like the bylaws and the charter has been very helpful and insightful and appreciated. So I just want to thank him for all that he has contributed to. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay. If I may.
Of course.
Jay brought up something that's been near and dear to my heart for a number of years, and hopefully with the new administration we have presently and the one that will follow, I truly hope that a deep dive will be taken into the charter as the town is taken forward into a new era. And I think there needs to be a restructuring of the town operations at the same time that the charter is adjusted to accommodate those changes. It needs to happen side by side, and it's not a short process. It's probably a year, 2 or 3 years, probably. As those involved in town government know, at this point, there are a lot of issues. Our interim town manager is tackling a lot of them head-on, and I'm hearing wonderful things out on the street. That's always been my barometer of how we're doing, is that people have been willing to talk to me, and I'm able to bring that back and know that the town is headed in the right direction if it continues to go that way. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree completely. I think we're somewhat overdue for a charter review, and I think a deep dive is very warranted.
Yeah, and I think the big issue too, and I've seen this in a couple companies I worked for over the years, is that the company started as a small family-owned business and then became this family-owned corporation and kind of grew out of its britches. Well, the town has done that. And we need to start acting like a large, substantial town in the state of Massachusetts, not this little bedroom community that we were back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I think it's time to embrace our identity, or at least identify ourselves as something, whatever we want to be. I think it's tough to say we're a farming community anymore. We certainly
Right.
have farming in the community, but we are not tiny anymore, that's for sure.
I agree.
So that brings me to my one comment, which is just that with Dave's leaving of the Finance Committee and Ms. Tavares having left after her term completed over the summer, we are about to enter budget season with 5 committee members for the Finance Committee. We are a committee of 7, quorum is 4, so we have one person. As we can see, we have a couple people that aren't here tonight, and Mr. Simeone's remote. So if there is any interest whatsoever, it is a really good way to get a good insight into the workings of the town. It's laborious, certainly, during budget season, but I think there is a large payoff for it as well. There are volunteer forms on the website, which I believe are going live digitally soon. I don't know if they've actually gone live yet.
Yeah.
I haven't looked. But they're easy to fill out, so I encourage anyone.
I heard rumor there was one person that was planning to fill one out, but I don't know if that's been submitted yet or not.
Not that I've heard. I'm supposed to get it as soon as it gets submitted, but I haven't seen anything yet. I will, there was also so this was interesting as well. I don't know if people watched this during the select board meeting where they appointed 3 sewer commissioners, and they
Yeah.
actually had 4 applicants for 3
Yeah.
positions, which has never happened that I've seen. And it sort of all came down to, they responded to a little mailer that was sent out and said, oh, I would do that. Not specifically saying I would like to be on the sewer commission, just that sounds cool. So I think that's,
We should try that.
exactly. I think Selectman Enke mentioned that it was, I'm sure, not coincidental. But the 4th person that was not selected, I will be reaching out to make some suggestions if you would like to move over here as well. But yes, I think it's certainly worth looking into as to whether or not we can do flyers. It's easy enough to do. All right, with that, we have, I didn't bother sending out an amended agenda. Izzy will not be here this evening, the town finance director. He had another meeting to go to, so I'm just going to skip over the finance director report, and we can move right into our new business. So I have it on here is special town meeting warrant summary. So the interim town manager has been communicating with myself and the moderator, and on occasion the chair of the select board as well, just to kind of go over the formalities of the order of the warrant articles and how we've historically done the warrant pamphlet, and how we might want to do it instead. And he's sent over a couple options from other towns as well. And basically it's going to be, or at least at the last iteration, is going to be the usual verbiage of the actual article, the legalese. And then below that is a bolded summary, either written by the interim town manager, the finance director, whomever was actually putting it forward, a little blurb, and then the usual votes for the select board, the finance committee, and then there's the option to have an additional comment that we can put in for each individual warrant article. So this is something somewhat new. So I told him that I would be interested in that because I think it could be beneficial just to have additional voices. If we're not unanimous, I think it would be good to have sort of explaining why we may not be unanimous to the public before we actually get to special town meeting floor, I think is important. So for that, I believe he needs our final vote by early October. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe I think it's like October 13th.
Final vote on what?
On what we would have for our actual,
The format you were
Summaries.
just talking about?
possibly even the
summary.
language. Let me pull up the email just to make sure I don't want to misquote.
Your summary, not mine.
Exactly. Oh, sorry, that was a different one.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go right ahead.
the summary voting thing that comes around for elections, when there are articles in there, a lot of times, they give you the summary, and then they tell you what a yes vote means or what a no vote means, summary. Something like that could be helpful if it's not a lot of language.
Could you repeat the last part? I just didn't quite hear the,
But when you said you have the article, then you do the summary of the article.
yep,
In the voting guide, they tell you if you vote yes, it means this. If you vote no, it means that.
okay, a little explanation, sort of like what they
Yeah.
send out from the state for the,
Yeah, the consequences of voting yes, consequences of voting no.
okay. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, and I think you're gonna, I haven't seen the draft articles, but I think you're gonna see some interesting, articles coming through in November to address some of the issues that have developed over the past couple of years financially and in pay scales and so on and so forth. Honestly, I don't know what specifically is coming forward, but I think you're gonna see that it's gonna be, manipulating funds around in an unusual way. So I think the more information and more understanding that the voters can have at town meeting, the smoother it's going to go.
Agreed. So the schedule that the interim town manager has put together is that, so the draft warrants were sent off to town council yesterday, and we should be receiving them back from town council on the 1st of October. So I have a feeling that's when we'll actually see them. I have not actually seen them. I've seen snippets here and there and parts of some of them here and there, but nothing concrete. And then the draft warrant will go to the select board on the 4th of October. So he's asking for our final report by the 17th of October. So we have a meeting scheduled on the 10th, which is where I'm sure we'll go over all of this. We really don't want to have to do another meeting on the 17th, but we may have to do another meeting on the 17th. I want to give opportunity for something to be reflected on and for people to have a chance if there is disagreement with the votes to make sure. Because we will not have a meeting between now and when we are supposed to technically vote on them. So, yeah, we may end up having to put together a meeting for the 17th. So I will write that back to Carter and let him know as well. Because it has to go to the printer by the 18th. That is the drop date for them. So we can get them mailed out by the 25th, which gives us time for actually having the town meeting on the 12th.
Kind of trying to understand how we got backed up already on this so tight, because there isn't anything unusual about when the warrant opened, when the warrant closed. Is it because the schedule for a fall special town meeting needs to be adjusted also, just like we're talking about the spring town meetings? I mean, nothing unusual has happened since the warrant opened, yet we're backed up solid against deadlines that can't possibly be made properly.
Right. I think that would be a charter review, I believe, because it is, again, the warrant is open for 60 days by charter. When the warrant opens, I'm not sure if that's set in the charter for a number of days prior to town meeting. But it closed only 10 days ago.
Right.
So it hasn't really closed for that long. It's just, from there, it gets really compressed. Everything kind of has to happen right away.
Yeah.
But I agree, yeah, if we had had this closed on the 2nd, if we had backed everything off by 2 weeks, then we would have an extra meeting in between there to do it.
Yeah.
And it would just be 2 weeks.
Seems to me there are X number of days either from town meeting that it has to close or something. But again, you know, that needs to be analyzed, and if it doesn't work, then it needs to be fixed. Start the fall town meeting process in July.
All right, I think that is a very valid question as well. I will happily bring that one forward. So yeah, that was basically it. Those were really his kind of main questions were, is there something that the finance committee would like to put in there? If, you know, we don't have to put anything in there. I did let him know that we do take a vote on every article regardless, and we just say whether or not it has a financial impact or not. That's really about all I had for that one. There wasn't much more for it. It was pretty simple. As soon as I actually get something formal from somebody, as far as a draft goes, I will send it around. Actually, I will email Carter and just see if we could just have access to the draft that just went to the town council. If it's already gone to town council, it's close enough, I think.
It's gone to town council without the select board reviewing it? It's usually the other way around, but, I mean, six of one, half dozen of another. It needs to get reviewed, not held up anyway.
No, went to the only dates that he has in here is the 16th it closed, the 25th it went to town council, and then the select board gets it on the 4th of October. And they finalize it on the 15th. So yeah, they only have, they'll get it on a Friday. They'll get it on Friday the 4th. It has to be, they'll get the final version on the Friday the 11th, a week later. And then on the 15th, that following Tuesday, 5 days later, they have to vote on it themselves. So they're backed up against it as well. There are some pretty big articles on there.
Yeah.
All right, I will request that from Carter and send it if I can get that as well. Okay. The DLS Financial Policy Manual Draft. This just keeps on coming up. The interim town manager would appreciate the finance committee's opinion on it. I have not heard back from Izzy whether or not he believe it was Izzy that was going to reach out. It was either Izzy or Carter that was going to reach out to the DLS contact to see if there was a red line version available. I have not heard back from that.
I think I mentioned in a select board meeting over the last couple of weeks in regards to that. Oh, yes, because they've had it on their agenda to start reviewing it. And I suggested to them that I looked at the financial part of it, where the borrowing limits and so on are set in there, and they're identical to what we have now. And that's one thing that over the past few years has been discussed, that we haven't adjusted that in a lot of years. And it isn't something you do lightly. You need to understand why you're doing it before you do it. So, I don't know, maybe this isn't an appropriate time to make any changes there. But I think that should be kept in the background, because what's coming down the pipeline for needs and the need for funding for those needs may bump us back up against those limits. And it may be prudent somewhere in between to bump those limits up. There's no way around it. The town's going to need more money to operate. We're a bigger town. We have requirement for more services. Costs are out of the sky. Excuse me. As much as I used to be the one that would never agree to increase taxes or increase borrowing.
Wait, write that down.
Yeah, well, I think I've come around over the past few years that back then it was appropriate, but again, because of the size we've grown to and the needs that we have and all of the things that we've put off for 20 or 30 years, if we had spent that money incrementally over those 30 years, I think we'd be in a much better position. But now we're going to come to a point where we're going to be forced to spend it all at the same time. And if we have those borrowing limits handcuffing us, then there's going to be a problem.
The former town manager used to always tell us that the reason we don't go above those limits is because it affects our bond rating. And I believe her, but I still have yet to see evidence to suggest that. Show me anything that says, if you do this, this happens, and here's the precedent for it, and here's the evidence for it.
Exactly. We pushed that issue a couple of different times. There were some extenuating circumstances going on at the time that would help kind of soften any type of negative effect on our bond rating. But my understanding is it would take a large dollar amount to affect our bond rating. You know, yeah, it might slip a little bit, and if it's 0.25% or less, how does that weigh against what we need to get done?
Correct.
I also noticed that we don't have a AAA bond rating. We only have an AA+.
Right.
And I'm curious as to why we only have an AA+ and not a AAA. Is it because we aren't borrowing enough money? In other words,
That could be a good piece of it.
if you're not using the credit that you have.
Yep. If you ever watch your ratings on your credit cards,
Exactly.
if you pay them off every month and you keep your balances low, your credit score goes down.
Yep. Your limit might go up, but your credit goes down.
Right.
Yeah, I've wondered that as well, because some of the surrounding towns have AAA bond ratings. I don't know why they're doing anything different or how they're doing anything different. It's not like we've missed payments, to my knowledge.
Yep.
So I'm curious as to how long we've been in a AA+, and if we've ever been a AAA.
Right. The other thing, I'm going to start bringing it up now. There is a proposal to float a bond that's coming to a special town meeting. I have some strong feelings about it from a couple of different perspectives. But that's another one where the public's going to really need to be educated as to how that affects us over the long term.
Yep.
And the only comment I make about a bond is that we just finished paying off a bond, was it last year or the year before?
last year, I thought.
The last fiscal year, yes.
Oh, no, we have $4.20 left on it.
I'm sorry.
This year, we finished paying it off.
But just be aware that one of the things that was done with that bond was to pave the parking lot between the TC Passios and the old high school. That parking lot was destroyed when the new building was built and the athletic fields were made, and we were paying for that up until this past year. So you got to understand that if you start using bonds to pay for things, just be aware that it may be beyond its usable life well before you pay it off.
Not only that, but if it's a bond, am I not can you get not an excludable debt bond? Or would that be, this would be non-excluded debt?
No, my understanding is that, and again, I haven't, because it hasn't been brought forward in its entirety yet.
Right.
It fits within our ability, and this, let me just say that I was told it fits within our budget to be able to pay the payments over the term of the bond. Now, how that suddenly came about, where we were told during the budget season last year that we had no capacity to take on short-term debt because we wouldn't be able to make the payments. So what's changed in 6 months? There's something, unless I've got a detail wrong.
Yeah, that was, because that's my concern. If it is excluded or non-excludable debt, that means that it comes out of the operating budget, which
Right.
means we have to pull the money from somewhere
Right.
to pay for it. If it's excluded debt, it still comes from the budget, it just comes from, well, it comes from the levy, it's just everyone's taxes increase. So that would make for a very interesting conversation that we should have been having already, I think.
Most definitely.
If
And
it's
that's-
September 26th, and we have to vote on this on November 12th, and we don't know what the number is, we don't know what the plan is. I realize that there's still information that's needed to be gathered. But I do look forward to, and I believe the chair of the Parks Commission is going to be joining us at our next meeting. I have not confirmed that entirely, but the last time we had spoken, she was planning to attend our meeting to discuss it.
Something, again, I know this is, on my way out the door, but
Hey, you can say whatever you want
you
now.
know, I struggled with actually my closing date, because I had the choice of when I wanted to close on this property. I could have waited till December, February, whatever, but I just decided it was time to go, for many reasons. But to bring a proposal for spending money or appropriating money, excuse me, that's the way I wanted to state it, so we don't lose a grant allocation or something like that. I'm tired of the taxpayers being pushed up against a wall and being told, well, if you don't appropriate this, we're going to lose this. Well, in some cases, that's just the way it is. If town meeting decides not to fund that particular proposal, then it's not Lunenburg taxpayers' money, it's grant money that's coming from other sources. And they'll just have to regroup and go at it a different way. It's kind of like with the ARPA funds, you don't,
Yeah, that's another concern I have.
yeah, well, ARPA is, yeah, me too. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, at the same time, though, I think it certainly is at least worth bringing to the voters. They should get to have the say. I appreciate the attempt to do the work and bring it to the voters to say, here's our thought, here's what we're thinking, here's all the work that we've done, yes or no. And then it goes out to the legislative body and they get to decide. But I would like to have additional information as soon as possible, because I am curious as to what it's going to do. We know what our percentages are for our excludable debt. We know what our percentages are for non-excludable debt. We know where we are for our debt service currently. and we know the capacity that we have in our in our current debt capacity, and over the long term where that kind of stands. But DLS has a calculator that you can go in there and you can put what you're borrowing, the total that you're borrowing,
Yep.
what your expected percentage rate is at, and the term, and you can look at whether you want level principal or if you want, I forget what it was. It was two different options. Basically, you keep the payment the same for the entirety, or you pay more in interest overall, and you have a difference in that, something to that effect.
Yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, it was like $500,000 a year for 30 years, which isn't a small chunk of change. But to go to your point, if we do have that in the budget, where was that last spring?
Exactly.
Why was that not available?
Right.
Where was that hiding?
And again, coming up against whether this town does it or not, what this town needs to do to get its infrastructure where it should be now, and definitely is not, is pulling at the availability of all those funds also.
Mm-hmm.
So there's gonna have to be a decision in the taxpayer's mind, well, if I fund this, then we can't move this forward.
Right.
You know, it's gonna be a swap off.
We come back to the age old, we need to have a plan, a long-term plan, where we say, these are the priorities, and this is where we're going to do them. We expect to build a school on this, around this time. We expect to have to fund this project around this time. We'll need a fire truck around this time. And I know we have bits and pieces of that, but we don't have a cohesive document, which I know the master plan steering committee is supposed to be working towards, but the only downside I have with that is it's sort of a pie in the sky. If money wasn't an issue, what would you want, sort of a thing. It's not a reasonable attempt. It's an appreciated document that's coming forward, but it's not necessarily guiding for financial policy and planning for debt service and all of that.
I have a longtime family member that's been in financial forecasting for the construction industry through a government-run entity. And I was talking with him a couple of months ago, actually, about the push for a 10-year plan. And he said, to tell you the truth, honestly, personally, 10, 15, if you can go out 20. The margin of error increases as you go out further. But you have this plan that if you stick by it and only adjust it where you need to, then you know where you're at every year for the next 2 decades. And when you're developing that plan, you initially need to ignore what the economy is going to do during that time period. And you just adjust for what it actually does when it happens.
Right. If you know you're gonna need to build a school 15 years down the road, you need to have your debt capacity there so you can get a grant or get your MSBA money for that and actually get your excludable debt for that and build your school. You can plan for that. If you don't have a plan of when you're gonna build something, then you just sit here either with tons of capacity but no way to pay for it because you've spent all of your money on the omnibus budget instead of on your non-excludable debt to pay for stuff, and everything has to be excludable debt, and everyone's taxes just have to continue bumping up for each of those, which that's a really hard sell to the public to say, hey, we just realized 20 years ago we had to build a building, but we didn't talk about it until 5 years ago, and now we need to build one, and your taxes are gonna, increase by X percentage all of a sudden. I think there's certainly flaws in the way that we're doing it currently.
And back in the days of a $20 million annual budget, you didn't have the surprises that you get in the past decade or even past few years. It pretty much ran by the way you planned it, and there weren't these huge surprises, and year after year, you came out the other end in good shape and you went on to the next. Well, we've seen what the last 5 years have been like, and it's not likely to improve much in the near future, so the planning part is going to be hugely important.
Right. Not to mention that we've, we're gonna come back to it again at some point. There's gonna need to be discussion for more overrides. Because the correction was made last year, or this past spring, to help get schools to maintain some level of service. But that doesn't track with inflation and where it's been. 2.5 isn't gonna keep up with that. If you continue taking steps where inflation goes up here and 2.5 is only doing this, and next year it's this and this, that gap keeps on growing, and you can only squeeze the budgets so much. And looking at them, they're squeezed across the board.
Yeah, this isn't a popular statement, but I've already made it once or twice, and that is that, just, excuse me, 2 collective bargaining cycles on the school side is gonna eat up that override over a 3-year contract.
I'm curious as to what they're, I've
Yeah,
heard that
I don't know
coming
what they're gonna
close.
negotiate, but, the way I look at it is when you take a look at the salary reserve budgeted amount, $300,000 for 2025, if I remember correctly, on the school side.
I believe it was 700,000. I believe it brought the salary reserve line, came up to 700,000 by the end after the budget season went through. It may have been a $300,000 increase, but I believe they had around $750,000 in
Well,
there.
that's reflective of what they expect they need for the first year of the contracts
Correct.
that are in negotiation.
Correct.
So you multiply that times 3, and that's the cost over the 3-year term of the
Right.
contracts.
Which, from a budgeting standpoint, if the budget is increasing by 2.5% on a yearly basis, and your net of salary increases, just to stay below minimally competitive with what your salaries are, is 4%,
Yep.
you're never gonna have money for anything else.
Right.
And you're always going to have to be saying, sorry, we're gonna have to let people go, because you can't make that.
Right.
So I think I think we scraped by this past spring, but I think we are very much going to see it, not just on the school side, but on the town side as well. I think we're gonna run into a massive issue coming up with personnel and just people leaving for money elsewhere. It's non-competitive.
And I dare say that it's, our inability to, or our lack of bringing our finances forward to the needs of today that have got us in that position. And there are ways, and Carter's mentioned a few of them, that, there are other things that can help you on the salary side if you take care of the people you have and, have them give input and have them happy in what they're doing. I mean, I did it in private industry for a lot of years for a couple of different reasons. I chose not to take the higher salaries because I was happy where I was, and I wanted the flexibility to raise my kids and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things that play into it, and it's not all just dollars and cents.
Yeah, I think we need to do a very big look, and I think the Budget Task Force is planning to do this as well, is to look at, I mean, it's a tall order. We don't have that many meetings left before we have to do a report. But to sort of look into how much of a hole we're in salary-wise across other different departments, comparatively, regarding comps and whatnot from other towns. Because even if you simply just use that as a number for an override, I think you're well into the $1.5 million override, easily, just to get salaries to a point where people are being paid, a living wage, or at least you're somewhat competitive, and you're boosting morale at that point. You're not having people say, I'm not coming in because it's not worth it. Why am I gonna come in to get paid nothing, basically, for extra? but then it's $1.5 million. It's a large number. That's a big increase. Which comes back to your, are we still a farm community, or are we a community that's grown and we're a large town that you can't have both sort of the large town without taxes. Or you can't have the large town and not have taxes, unfortunately. There aren't ways to do it.
Taxes and/or revenue sources.
Right. Which, there's not a lot of revenue sources out there.
Right, there aren't many options beyond taxes.
Right, yeah. So I'm gonna keep the financial policy manual document on here until we see something from somebody. I don't have any reason to read through it more than I've already read through it, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what the plan is. I don't know if we're going to, the select board's just going to adopt it. So, I'll reach out to Carter, Izzy, and Caesar and just see kind of where they stand with that and send that around if there is a red line version. Because I am curious. I don't want to go through it word by word and compare them side by side. That's not what I want to do with my time.
Right. That's not good use of anybody's time,
No.
trying to do that.
Not unless they're getting paid to do it.
Right.
All right. Moving on to the budget presentation template, which I completely forgot to send around. So my apologies for that one. But I do have at least the notes that we had made before. I can open that up. And what I would like to do is at least kind of get some sort of a finalized version to an extent that we can send out, because I did tell Carter we would send something out by early-ish in October, so that he can submit it to his departments and whatnot for the budget season. So, I guess first and foremost, what do we want to see in terms of a budget from the departments? We had a discussion last time as to whether needs-based was the correct terminology, whether level service, or actually it was needs-based versus minimum service. And I do want to kind of make a definition, and I think what should be included with that is sort of definitions as to what we're expecting those to be. So I would like to, one, decide, are we requesting level service, needs-based, pie in the sky, minimum service, whatever we want to call it, what budgets do we want to see presented to us? And then how do we define those budgets so that everybody knows what they're asking for?
Yeah, the last couple of years, obviously last year got totally confusing because of a dozen budgets out there floating around, especially the school budgets. I kind of wonder why we can't go back to, you start with the town manager's recommended departmental budgets or the dollar amount developed by the department heads based on what the town manager tells them they have to spend. Okay, so you have the
Town manager's recommended budget.
town manager's recommended, budget, but it's put together by the department heads. She or he, excuse me, just gives them the dollar amount they've got to work with. And then they plug it into their budget the way they see those dollars fit. And then we used to have a presentation of the items that the department head was very strongly pushing for above the town manager's budget. Target, above target is what it was called. Okay, so then all you're working with is the budget with the dollar amount that the town manager has allocated to that budget. And then you have the department head telling you, but we really need this and this is why. And we need this above target and this is why. And leave it at that. Don't try to give fancy names and end up with 3 different iterations of the budget out there. That's my feeling. We used to do that with the previous town manager, and, you know, it was still a long budget season, but you weren't working, well, which one was it? You know, however we identified them in the last few years, by color or whatever. You had the original target budget, and you had the above-target budget.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the town manager made the final decision on what they brought forward as the budget proposal to the select board and town meeting. I think that's a much simpler process and a doable process.
So that effectively would be akin to what we have with the school department, right?
Yeah, pretty
Essentially.
much. They're told how much money they're gonna get
And
initially.
we're told, this is, you know, this is what we have, what we're told we can spend, we can use.
Yep.
This is what we need,
Right.
and here's why.
Yep.
I guess the issue I have with that is if everybody says this is what we need, and everybody needs more, and there isn't more to do, at what point do you then say, well, we think that this one is worthy, so we're gonna take it from this one?
Or your department
There's always going to
heads-
be that discussion.
What's that, Jay?
There's always going to be that discussion.
Right,
And I agree with what Dave said. We need what the target budget is and above target. And above target needs to be justified by the department head. And sometimes there are mandates that they can show justification for, but sometimes there isn't. But you can't just ask for more money because you want it. You have to have a justification for it.
And I also think that the adjustment to get those dollars should come from within that department first, and then negotiate with the town manager if it needs to come from somewhere else, if it seems to be
Yeah.
that important. Then it's very understandable. I mean, you got 2 terms.
Yep.
And once you put in your $2.5 million override, then you'll have plenty of money to do that target budget.
now it's 2.5 million,
Well,
There's a lot of variables that go into the budget.
right?
There is, between the cherry sheets and the state, the chapter 70, there's so many variables that come in at different times of the year that, you know, make them adjust the budget.
I mean, ultimately, it's not our decision how that process goes, but we have some input into it.
Which I have my own gripe about, considering that's not what finance committees are supposed to be for.
Well, we could really push, or you guys could really push in the charter change to put the finance committee back in a strong position
They
to
back-
develop the
yeah.
budget.
Not develop it.
They-
I think they need to be back into the position of the Ways and Means Committee.
Okay,
It's a check and balance. That's what the
Yep.
finance committee is designed for at the state level. That it's the executive that puts the budget together and then hands it over to the legislative, the House. The House takes a look at it, they change things, they meet with the department heads, they say, they get justification, as you're saying. They adjust the budget and they put that one forward to town meeting, and then the town decides. That's, I mean, read MMA, Finance 101, and that's exactly what it says. It's,
Yep.
right now, it's executive, we ask a couple questions, but executive, and then we ask a couple questions, but executive, and then we say, okay, now you can vote. There's not a lot of oversight with it, which I take great, yeah, I don't like it.
I do feel that through our efforts and members previous to us in the past 5 years or more have brought the finance committee back to a committee that really has some effect on the budget process. You know, for a few years back, a while back, it was just, yeah, okay, rubber stamp type of committee, and whatever came forward from town manager and the select board was what went to town meeting. We actually have developed, I was gonna say the power to make change, but I don't like that
Well, the
description.
power of influence, you could say, at least.
Yeah, influence, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and that's, I think that's a testament to everybody that's been on this committee in the last 5 years or so.
I think it's certainly a step in the right direction. I want to keep going.
Yep,
I don't think it should stop there.
Right.
And that's my argument for a charter review, is that
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, I know how it happened and I know when it happened, but I'm curious to know as to the why it happened. What was the impetus for kind of centralizing it and removing the checks and balance
Exactly.
from the budget-making process, and how was that framed and sold and voted on? Because that's a charter, that's a 9/10 requirement, right? That means it probably got a unanimous vote at town meeting, which is the cards. Nobody voted against those.
right.
Okay, so,
Oh, seeing as I'm not gonna be here, I'm assuming we're not voting on minutes this evening, but that set of minutes that I asked we push off, there's a section in there that I was talking about the charter, and it's not worded properly because I was talking about a charter commission. I'm sorry, I didn't get to it with all I've got going on, but if I can edit something or put something together real quick, I may just send it off to you as
sure.
the replacement paragraphs for those two.
Sure, yeah. I don't have any plans to vote on any minutes because I haven't seen anything updated.
It's just important to me that the minutes differentiate between what it actually says and the fact that I said charter commission, not a charter review committee or anything like that, because it's comes under Mass General Law, and its task and the way it's created is totally different from what we do with a review committee.
Interesting, okay. So it's another grant writing services, not grant.
Yeah, do you still have that on the agenda?
The grant writing services?
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm concerned about it. We'll get to that one.
Okay.
I mean, I certainly do like the simplicity of only having those two numbers. I just wonder, are we doing our due diligence by not looking through the budget, the target budgets? Or are you suggesting that we still look through the target budgets, but that's what we're requesting of the departments, is the target, the town manager target, and then,
I think the target budget is the major focus. And then piece by piece, the pieces that the department heads come forward with, I'm very strong on, I need this, above target. So the budget you're really doing the fine look through is that target budget.
okay,
And that, knowing what's in that, and if you're comfortable with that, then you know how the over-target items are gonna affect what you've already reviewed.
okay. So I take it back, then it's not like the school department, because you're still suggesting we look through and comb through the target budget to an effect line by line in not in the meeting specifically, but have the actual line by line item.
Yeah, and that's
project
where
to
I
look
think you
through.
get your strongest check of your proposed budget.
Right.
That way, and then you can make the adjustments with whatever either town manager or the department head pushes forward as a very strong need that's not covered under this target budget.
Okay,
And then it's not our place to decide whether it does go in or doesn't go in. We just make a recommendation, and at the end of the day, it's town manager's final decision at present,
right.
if the money's there to do it or moves it from something else.
But that does give a public meeting for the department head to say, this is, if there was to be an amendment on town meeting floor, this is what we really need.
Yep.
Okay. So, I guess, so originally I have for slide 3 is a summary of the previous year's budgets. That's easy to do. And then slides 4 and 5 I have as proposed target budget for the upcoming year. So we would want to change that to just town manager target budget.
Right. Not to harp on it, but I think something that this committee really needs to be able to digest before you get into dealing with a target budget for Springtown meeting is to have been able to dive deep into the closeout for the previous fiscal year and see where the surpluses were and the shortages and so on, so that you understand where there may be some issues that need to be adjusted going into the next budget cycle. You know, that's what I always used to do. The minute I could get my hands on the closeout of either a quarter or preferably the fiscal year, I watched all quarters when they were given to us on a timely basis. That way you knew where the shortages were, and yeah, you can shuffle money around for the closeout to cover shortages, but you need to know where those were when you go into the next budget cycle and say, okay, again, it's not our purview, but we need to know that there were holes in certain places in the budget, so that when we review the budget that comes forward next, we look to see if those holes were plugged.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Well, that's,
Go ahead, Jeff.
that's where the actuals would come in handy, to see those on a quarterly basis, because then you can see where they're spending, where there are surpluses and overages, and expenses.
I guess, would that reflect interdepartmental transfers? If they had to pull funds
not-
from, we wouldn't see that at that level, right?
You wouldn't see transfers, but you should be able to see the line item budgets, how much has been expended for that quarter, if it's over or under.
Okay. Yeah, that would be really
Yeah,
nice.
because if there's a transfer, I would assume that the appropriated number would stay as the original appropriated number.
It would. I'm just thinking if,
Well,
go ahead.
Good, Jay.
don't the transfers come to us? The
Yeah,
FinCom?
interdepartmental transfers are supposed to come through us, almost like the reserve account.
Okay. So we just don't do it.
We may be using the
There really
wrong
shouldn't be any-
terminology. Within budget lines, within a department, those can be done
Those are the
between the
ones that
department
have
head
in-house.
and the town manager signing off.
Right.
But if you're
Yeah.
shifting money from DPW to library or something like
Yeah.
that is required to come to us.
Right. No, I'm talking about within a department itself. If you were to say, our office supplies expenses were 10 times higher than we expected them to be, and you've transferred funds from your, I don't know, beautification
But that-
budget line.
Yeah, that really shouldn't happen till towards the end of the year. If everything is appropriately budgeted, unless there's been some sort of, an unexpected emergency breakdown, something to cause, a storm, something that has a significant effect on that budget. They shouldn't have to make any transfers basically towards the end of the year, if everything is properly budgeted.
But we would see that transfer if it did actually take place, correct?
I don't know if we see that or not. That's something we'd have to ask the town manager.
Yeah, and, I mean,
Because that gives
ask
us,
that question again?
would we actually see evidence of a transfer going from one line to another line if there was an unexpected expense that had to come out of somewhere? In other words, if there was, yes, we're reconciling how well they budgeted, but are we able to reconcile to the granularity of this specific line or this section of lines was not budgeted correctly at all, and you had to like emergency fill from other areas, and why wasn't that filled correctly? What happened?
Yeah.
Right, and
I don't know if we see that, though.
yeah,
unless the
no,
town
I
manager
don't think you
informs us.
will, and I'll bring up something that happened over a period of years, that reallocated money from a basically a facilities department now to pavement management. And nobody knew about it until a couple of us members of the Parks Commission started trying to figure out why the numbers didn't make sense on the closeout for 3 or 4 fiscal years in a row. That's the only way you pick up on things like that, the way in our present process. I mean, for more transparency, it'd be really nice if the town manager is signing off on a major interdepartmental transfer or within department
Within
transfer.
department,
That
Yes.
there's a comment made, you know?
It'd be nice if there was a
Town
policy.
manager or
in place.
finance director.
Right, yeah. Anything above, you know, 5 grand or 10 grand or whatever you want to make it,
Whatever number it is, yeah.
generates a required, hey, we did this to X, Y, and Z committees, boards, whatever.
Right.
That would be nice to have. That's a separate.
So everything I've encountered in the last 10 years is coming out tonight.
Yep. This is the meeting to air it all out, Dave.
But that again comes back to the needs for checks and balances.
Yep.
And how far into the process do you go with those checks and balances?
Yep.
That's a decision that needs to be made as a town as a whole, I think.
Okay, so a couple slides for the town manager target budget, and I've defined town manager target budget as the total proposed budget that fits within the town manager's target increase or decrease from a high level. And then ideally, 3 to 5 years of percentage and dollar amounts compared to the previous years. I want to see
Yep.
trends. How have you,
Right.
you know, what
Yeah.
did you get last year? Did you get a 5% increase 3 years ago that we forgot about? Or did you get a 1% decrease last year? And then I think that we would drop the slide 6 and 7, proposed minimum service budget for the upcoming year, and change that completely to the above target needs, requests. I guess needs.
Request.
So I guess, do we want to
With-
see just the requested stuff, or do we want to see only what they feel that they need above the target that they were given?
What are you defining as need?
So need is basically to maintain the level of service that they currently have.
Yeah, but that's
Is it-
something the department head should make make that decision, I think, make that call. Do I need to go
Yes.
for level service, or do I need to go with what's allocated to me, but identify these items that seriously need to be included if we can find the money for it?
Right, and that's what I'm calling them, above target needs. That they're needs that
Yeah, I hate that word in budgeting, because you can, there's 10 different definitions for needs.
Yeah.
that's why there's gonna be definitions in here. So that it can't be mistaken, and then there'll
Jay,
be,
do you have another word in mind?
you had
I would
requests.
say to request.
Oh, yeah, over budget, over budget request, or wherever we're at there.
Alright.
Request over.
Above target request
Above target.
Yeah, above target
Yeah.
request, yeah.
with justification.
Yep. I used to have to do that in private industry, and it was not fun some years.
Yeah,
And that was only with an $800,000 budget.
where are my bullets? I lost my bullets. Yeah, we'll just do it this way. Okay, so above target requests with justification, with for the upcoming year. Um, So how do we want to define the above target requests?
Well, one would be if something has been mandated, a new mandate that has an effect on the budget.
Okay,
Yeah, I think,
do we want to go to the level of unfunded mandates or just mandates?
Oh, yeah.
Because 99% of them are
Either way,
unfunded, but
yeah.
you'll
Well,
capture
yeah.
them by mandates.
It could be, yeah, it could be, a new law or regulation that's
Yeah.
going into
yeah,
effect.
but something like new unfunded mandates that are not covered in, that have not been part of the budget.
Yeah,
New federal, state mandates. I think we should not put unfunded because there are funded mandates that may be partially funded.
well, they're mandates, they just don't come with funding.
Right, they may not, but, I mean, we know that the majority of them are gonna come
Yeah.
unfunded.
Yeah.
Okay, so new federal or state mandates.
Other justifications by the department head, I mean, that's, we can't identify why the department head feels that this particular item and dollar amount is needed.
No, I just want to give some kind of guidance for the direction of them, just, you know, if it's, we need more number 2 pencils, then that's probably not
Yeah.
likely to be justifiable, but we need a new police
Yeah.
cruiser.
Is it operational or administrative?
Okay.
Capital, what's the,
Okay, so,
And one of the narratives that we've always used for capital projects is, oh, I just lost it. I'll get it back in a minute. It'll have to come back
That's
out
fine.
when it's ready. Oh, efficiency improvement or something like that, something to that effect. But again, I think that's part of the justification rather than.
right, that would be, yeah,
Rather than us putting it in here as a, for instance.
yeah, and that would fall under like the unanticipated expenses as well, or something like that, unanticipated expenses from past year or prior year or something like that. Again, that's justification, these are all, I guess, yeah, so maybe we just list a few examples of, and just say, above target requests,
don't overthink it, Evan.
what's that, Jay?
Don't overthink it, keep it simple.
Yeah, well, that's the problem.
I think if they want additional money, they're going to tell you why, and they're
Right.
going to provide the justification.
Okay,
And on top of that, at the end of the day, if the town manager who's doing that budget does not agree, it's not gonna happen anyway,
right.
you know?
But it at least gives the department heads an opportunity to express that to someone other than just the town manager
Definitely,
in a
Yeah.
in a public setting,
right.
Right.
which then allows the public to be involved and start sending notes and,
And I mean,
Informed.
potentially, with an educated public going into town meeting, if it didn't get added into the budget, it could potentially get put into the budget by a group of
Yes.
people at town meeting with the adjustment,
yep,
you know?
Yep.
But that's the key to it, the transparency.
Yes.
And knowledge. That's what drives a good town meeting, I
Agreed.
believe. And helps it be 3 hours instead of 8.
good luck.
Yeah,
All right, so above target requests, we could just say, Um, Present funds requested above the town manager target with ample justification. Okay, good enough?
Yeah.
And we'll let them decide what ample justification is.
Do you have something else, Jim?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll just keep that one simple-ish.
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't give them a 16-page document.
Exactly, yeah. You have to keep yours to 10 pages, but ours is 15. All right, personnel costs, salaries and wages, overview of personnel-related expenses, including any increases due to contractual obligations, step increases, or collective bargaining agreements.
And those used to be identified as, oh, Carrie was the one that was good with that.
Your COLAs, basically?
No,
Okay.
there was a term for it because they're the expenses that you have no control over and you have to fund no matter what.
Non-discretionary?
Non-discretionary, there it is.
Missionary.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's how she used to present the budget. She would give those non-discretionary ones first, which
Yeah.
eats up a percentage of your
Right.
levy. And you have no choice. You have to spend
Right.
that money.
I mean, it's how you budget at home.
Right. And then
I
you-
have to pay my mortgage.
Right.
Well,
Then you
technically.
allocate the rest into, she had actually 2 more levels of urgency, the way she split up the available levy.
Yeah, I appreciate that approach as well. It just makes sense. You don't have a choice. You have to pay these bills, and
Yep.
here's what it's gonna cost you no matter what you do. If you would like a fire department, here's what also you need to spend.
You gotta pay the water bill.
Right. That's only if you want a restaurant. Benefits, healthcare, pensions, other benefits. I did realize that, I know I've brought this up a number of times, but I think we should still discuss healthcare, and that's that the school department budget took a long time primarily because they didn't have a lockdown number on the healthcare budget number until well into
Yeah.
February.
Right.
Yeah.
So if,
And
go ahead, Jay.
not much you can do about that.
No, exactly, and that's kind of exactly where I'm going with this, is that if that is gonna hold you up, and that's 50% of your budget that can't be voted on by the school committee until
Yeah.
they have that locked-in number,
Yeah.
and they can't present to us.
Right.
But as we found at MMA, it pays to have a good relationship with the deputy director or whatever his position was for MMIA or whatever.
Maya,
Yeah, for
Yeah,
Meyer.
Maya.
Because everybody should know that we got that number probably a good firm number that we could work with 2 or 3 weeks before. We would have gotten it because we had a private conversation with the director at MMA.
correct,
So,
correct.
you know, somebody advocating that this is why we need this, and he was very responsive.
And also a good working relationship with the local agent, because Heather was able to get our number a couple weeks even before the state numbers were put out to everybody.
Right.
Because she had a good relationship with our rep.
Yep.
So I agree, yeah, those relationships are necessary. But, that said, this brings me to another suggestion of, pulling healthcare lines out as just a single budget line. It's making it its own line. That it's not negotiated by the CBAs, it can't be, because it's run by the town.
Right.
And it's a number that the school department has to wait for before they can do a budget. If it's pulled out of there, you pull the funds out of there as well. I mean, obviously you don't just take the the $3 million out and say, here's $3 million more dollars. But you pull the $3 million out of their budget and you put it into the healthcare line.
Right.
And you pull the healthcare budget out of DPW or fire or whatever, and it becomes just the healthcare line. And that's on the town to figure out, because it's their negotiation anyways. I think doing so may allow us to get a school department budget a week or two earlier, maybe, which could be nice.
Yep.
So, but I know that not everybody on this board agrees, agrees with that, but, I would like to at least have some discussion in the next few weeks, probably after special town meeting, between special town meeting and the first of the year maybe, about how we do the budgeting. And I think that'll be a conversation as well for whomever the new town manager is, when that person comes in, as to what makes the most sense. And then lastly on that one is just headcount comparisons for up or down. Are they expanding? Are they increasing are they meeting their 5-year staffing plan? Are they losing X number of people?
Can you change that to employee staffing?
I certainly can.
Thank
Headcount
you.
does sound a little bit aggressive.
That's specifically why I asked the DPW director if he was fully staffed. Was it our last meeting?
It was,
Yeah.
couple meetings before, yeah.
Right, but, you know, you need to, when you're talking about operations and how they're going and, you know, what the challenges are, you need to know, are you working with the staff that is allocated for you, or are you still short below those numbers? And if you're fully staffed and you're still unable to cover your responsibilities under that department, then that's when it says, okay, what other positions do we need to be looking at adding in the next year or two to augment that workforce? And again, that goes to growing your departments as your town grows.
Right, right. And I think that would be theoretically covered in the above target requests, ideally, right?
Yeah, that's where it should come in.
Right.
Definitely.
Okay. In terms of the employee staffing as well, do we want to get into the level of detail where we ask them if they have information as to why employees have left or why they're not fully staffed, if they have any indication? Yeah, I know, because it enters the
think I wanna
HR
go down that hole.
realm.
And I think that's something they'll tell us if they want to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't want to be the HR department.
right, and, yeah, right,
Yes.
exactly.
No.
Okay, good.
Just
And that's,
maybe an idea of, like how many are full-time, how many are part-time breakdown.
Okay. That would be in, yes, so staff at org chart or listing of full-time / part-time employees. Or I guess number of. Something to that effect, Jay?
Yeah.
Okay. Some of the departments, it doesn't make sense to have an org chart. Some of them very much do. It's very appreciated with the fire department, or the police department.
Yeah,
Put
the
that
larger
together.
departments.
I would hate to see a school department org chart. Okay, after personnel into operating, so summary of operating costs, supplies, utilities, maintenance, et cetera. Do we want to include unanticipated, or I figure they'll probably just put them in there anyways? Sort of just, this is what was increased, this is what was decreased. We thought our target was this, we ended up spending this. And then that's kind of covered here with key cost drivers, identifying factors causing increases or stability in increase in operational expenses. Increases or stability? No, not stability. That's a typo.
What's that?
This is a typo, yeah. Identify any factors causing increases in operational expenses. There you go. Rising cost of utilities. Unanticipated
In the,
repairs / expenses, stuff like that.
what's the upper line? Above key cost?
What's the, oh, the key cost one, above it?
Yeah, what's that?
Just
Oh,
the
somewhere.
operating costs, a summary of them. Sort of what they,
All right,
just
then.
the high level of, you know, we spent X amount on, our utilities adds up to this, our maintenance adds up to this,
Okay. Drop down.
and then key cost drivers, what's driving those specifically.
Yeah. Well, cost drivers could also be plus or minus.
Yes, and causing increases / decreases, thank you. On operational expenses. So changing utility costs, I'm sure they don't go down, but. Does it make sense to ask for historical trends or anything as well? Because we're asking for it with their
Yeah.
budget. Do we want to see how their historical trends are for expenditures on personnel versus operating?
Didn't we already ask for that further up?
We did, yeah, from the general budget, but that's at like the high level of just the budget itself, which maybe we don't need to get into that level of detail. They can kind of explain
Yeah.
down here, just, okay. Fine by me, we can keep it shorter. Capital expenses, if applicable. So ongoing capital projects, I'm curious to know like what they actually have that's currently been appropriated and approved at prior town meetings, and sort of just, these are the capital projects that are currently funded. Not under this budget, though. So just highlight any existing capital projects funded under prior.
Do we want to do that at the department head level, or do we want the town manager to produce that? Because that's got to be, that information has to be produced for the capital planning committee process anyway,
Okay.
so. it
Maybe
might
we
be
just want
better.
a presentation from the town manager every now, as well during this to say, here's where we stand with
That, the,
capital
This
projects that are
documentation.
ongoing from, you know,
Previously funded and
2016.
ongoing. Yep.
okay. All right,
I
so,
mean, that document is supposed to be,
And from-
what's that, Jay?
and from the facilities director.
Right, yep. So we don't necessarily need any ongoing, we would just want potentially planned capital investments. This is their sort of forecasting.
right.
Well, are you talking about the future, or are you talking about,
For this one, I think it should be,
See, there's where you
See
just
what?
flipped. You
Yeah.
flipped from what's going on and what's previous.
yeah, what's in
To
progress
future.
and what's future?
See, and
so
I don't know that,
do we want to see any capital then? I think we should have at least a
Well,
glimpse of
capital-
capital.
well, you're gonna see,
Yeah.
you're gonna, I think what's been lacking is the previously funded and what's in progress from the data
Yes.
we've received over the few years. The other end comes out in the capital, the recommended capital plan budget from the town, from the committee and the town manager. And usually we see both of those.
We see the ones that are currently
Well, I
ongoing.
say that only because I've been intimately involved in the process.
I don't remember ever seeing the ones that are currently the only ones that I recall
No.
seeing with capital projects are the list of what makes it to town meeting floor. And we see the ones that are below the line. We see them
Yeah,
here.
okay,
But
okay.
at town meeting, we only see the ones above the line,
Right.
historically. Not sure what it's gonna be from now on. And then we have an article to reappropriate non-expended capital funds from XYZ years, but we never
Yeah.
see anything for what's currently being done.
Yeah, that's in the same article. It's
Yeah.
the funding sources for the capital plan.
Right, exactly. So I don't recall ever seeing, this is what's being done currently.
I retract that.
Well, that's
because
usually in the town manager's report, if anything's been completed or is in progress, usually major project,
Right.
like,
And that, Jay, the last year or two, we did not really get. I don't even think capital planning got a full report.
Yeah,
no, there's a lot of times projects get put on hold, like, Bridge at Flat Hill Road, it's
Yeah.
going on for a couple of years.
And I think that's gonna be important going forward. There are a lot of things that, information like that needs to be disseminated. And potentially, because it has not been the last 2 or 3 years, that doesn't mean it should fall off the edge of the earth and never come back again. I think members of this committee, capital planning, I hope, will say, hey, we used to get this, we want this back. As we bring the town back around to some semblance of normalcy in operations.
does capital plan keep track of what's currently being worked on?
They get a report at some point in the early stages of their analysis of the capital projects for future.
Okay,
I think that's about it.
okay. Do they keep track of historical projects? Like, we've spent capital on this department, this is the expended capital that we've spent on this department, this is the expended capital in this department?
Yeah, no.
I have emails.
The only thing they've tried to do in that respect is if there was unexpended money from, say, a parks project, they try to allocate that leftover balance towards a parks project,
Okay,
a new parks project.
okay. So even though it gets lumped into the giant article, that once that's,
The process of, yes.
Okay.
It's a funding source within the overall article, but the thought process is that it's actually helping fund that same department's project.
okay, well, that's good at least. I have emails from Mr. Beardmore then, to ask for more of that. Okay, so we should specify what type of capital expenses then. Are we looking for current requested capital expenses? Are we looking for future planned capital expenses? Are we looking for, what do we want to see during the budget presentation?
Both,
Both?
well, capital projects that are in progress
Yeah,
and capital projects that have been funded and what the stages of those are.
okay.
What's bouncing around in my head is, do you want to ask about projects that are stalled for one reason or another, or?
Well, that would be under projects that have been funded that are, well, technically it's supposed to be in progress, but maybe stalled because of lack of funding
Right,
or lack of, as things are with COVID, lack of, supplies.
Yeah. We've had a few projects over the past 3 or 4 years that were on the capital plan, got funded, and then they reevaluated the needs for that project.
Yeah.
Or, they hadn't looked at it the right way, so it fell off the list again.
Yeah,
And that's where capital planning's gotta be careful, because you can tie up a lot of money real fast in appropriations that are going nowhere. We had
Yes.
we had that
Things
issue a
change
few
all the
years
time.
ago, and there was, it was brought to light that we had $2.4 million, I think it was, sitting in either unexpended leftover money or projects that were
Fizzled out.
stalled for one reason or another. And Heather did get that cleaned up over a 2-year period or so.
yeah, at this point, I don't think there's probably likely to be too much that's unexpended, but I am curious, do we have any projects that are still around from 2015 that haven't been worked on since
Honestly, don't
2010 or
remember.
2017?
That would be on the report of, the initial report of what's in progress and what's still on the books.
Okay. So I've renamed this one Funded Capital Projects Statuses. Or statuses of funded capital projects.
That's a pretty simple way of putting it, Jay, don't you think?
Status of funded capital projects, yeah.
Yeah. Then it gives the department head the option as to how to interpret that and present it.
Right.
And then next year, you can fine tune that because you get 7 different types of presentations.
Exactly. So for that one, we would want to highlight any existing capital projects funded under prior fiscal years. And updates
Well,
on progress.
well, why you didn't make a progress report on any existing capital project funded under prior fiscal years?
I like that one much better.
Yeah, that does sound good.
Progress report.
Yes, report, thank you.
Funded from previous fiscal year.
Yep. Okay. And then I would assume probably another one then for requested. Do we want to see,
There's where I think we drop it off to the capital planning process.
I agree, yeah, because it'll be presented from the town.
Yes.
This town
Yeah.
manager will present it from the capital planning committee, and
Right.
we're not the capital planning committee.
Right.
Right.
So,
The capital planning presents it.
right, or have capital planning come in, right, okay.
Well, they usually do.
So,
But from the, if you're asking this of the department heads, this is what you're asking from the department heads, aren't you?
correct,
So, from the department heads, we want to know the status of funded projects that affect their budget.
which these wouldn't, right, because this is capital.
It's capital, but it has to do with whatever in their budget, their operation, within their operation.
Do we want to, okay, then do we want to say anticipated operational expenses of those capital projects?
Due to capital projects?
Right, and do the same thing, if we're doing sort of a progress report on current existing capital projects, do we
You're
also want to
confusing
see
me now.
anticipated operational expenses, or upkeep expenses, or whatever you want to call them?
Well, we want to know the status of ongoing capital projects that were
Yep.
previously funded, where those are at,
Yep,
because some of them can be a repair, whereas others is just a purchase.
right,
Right. And then you have planned capital investment,
I think that should be on a new
Now-
slide.
and how that is going to, well, affect the budget and improve their, efficiency of their operation,
Okay,
depending on what the capital project is.
So basically, what we're asking is it gonna cause more challenges, or is it gonna improve your operations?
Well, yeah, then improving your operation and make it more efficient,
Yeah, okay, I see where you're going
so
with that.
that technically should reduce your expenses,
Yeah.
or help your staffing.
right, right. All right, fine, we'll do it this way. There we Okay, so another slide with planned capital investments. And then,
Or would that be, are we talking about planned or requested?
I mean, for us, likely we're just requested, because capital planning will see they're requesting the 5-year to 10-year
Yeah,
capital
yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
So we have just, okay.
This would be for future years.
Current fiscal year,
Excuse me.
yeah, requested capital investments. Or capital projects, I guess.
Well, yeah, for FY
For that
26?
fiscal year that you're working on.
25,
Yeah,
FY
'cause
25.
we don't need to, excuse me, we don't need to see the request 5 years out. That's capital
No,
planning's
no.
purview.
Right, so current fiscal year. So requested capital projects, current fiscal year.
It just puts it on our radar so that we can
Yes,
expect it to be coming in more detail through capital planning.
Right, right. This
yeah.
one
But
probably
you want to know what they're looking at in the future.
So we do want further than just the current fiscal year then?
No, we want to look for the coming fiscal year,
Okay,
whatever project the capital projects are, and how that's going to benefit them.
okay, got it. Mention any CPC approved planned investments, so we can get rid of that planned investment 5, 10-year preferred, and then,
I love that we have a stenographer over there. I just love that you can do that. I've never been that person. I can take a tractor apart and put it back together, but I can't I can't edit a document as I'm going.
let's see. List any CPC approved capital projects.
Well, it wouldn't be approved yet by capital planning.
At that point, capital planning would have already done this, right? Because we're gonna get
They
these
would
in,
have done it they would have done it last year.
when does
Yeah,
capital planning usually have their votes by?
It's early.
Yeah, but we're voting it for the new fiscal year.
This is a reminder. Joanna's killed.
Right, but this is for that fiscal year. This is theoretically for fiscal year '26.
Yeah, we're not asking about anything beyond that. So that capital planning
Yeah, but it had,
prioritized list should be complete by that time. But they won't
You think
know
it's
for
gonna be
sure what's
completed?
funded.
What's that, Jay?
you think it'll be completed before,
They'll at least have the
They present-
priority list, but we won't know where the line is by that point. Because
Right.
that'll depend upon free cash and all sorts of other
Yeah.
funding.
yeah,
But the CPC list will be done by then.
So I mean, it'll allow them to give a plug for their
Yeah.
projects.
So list requested,
I would say, yeah, requested, if their request change.
yeah.
on
List
the Capital
requested,
plan list. We want to know what they requested and how it's benefiting them. Whether it gets,
Yeah.
whether it gets funded or not is another story.
yep. So let's get rid of that. Make this bold. Put a colon in there. And delete that guy out. Okay. So list requested capital projects. And then this is, benefits to
No, benefits department,
the department, yep.
it affects, operational efficiencies. Or how is it benefiting the department? What is this capital benefit gonna do for the department and the town?
Yep. Benefits to the department / town, operational,
Well, it could be operational or administrative, depending what
yeah,
what it is. It could have effect on either or.
operational / administrative,
I would just leave it at
oh, just,
our
yeah,
benefits to the department and the town.
but we still need to, we still want to know how it's going to be, what the effect is going to be on the future budgets too.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Benefits to the town, to the department and or town, and expected or anticipated
Dated, yeah.
operational / administrative costs,
Savings or expenses,
and
or
or
saving.
expenses.
Oh,
Something like that. So benefits to the department / town and anticipated operational or administrative costs and or expenses, equipment replacement, building repairs, etc.
yeah, I would like to say cost savings or expenses.
Oh, cost savings?
Hopefully, yeah, well, hopefully a capital project is some sort of a saving, you know, a financial benefit to the town, usually not an expense.
Okay, I can add that in as a third one then. Anticipated cost savings.
Yes,
Okay,
thanks.
so we get a good thing, 2 good things and a bad thing. We should make that a sandwich, right? We're supposed to put the bad thing in the middle.
Yeah, yeah, peanut butter and jelly.
All right, so that's likely not going to just be one slide, so we'll just put that as slide XX. And then we'll continue on with 12 is justification for cost increases, if applicable. So this is, I guess, sort of, this is reflecting, again, the personnel and operating expenses, I guess, and why that's increasing. So I'm wondering if that's even necessary anymore. Because we already have the legally or contractually required increases. That's from the collective bargaining portion and from the mandates. And we also have the, yeah, that's already, this is all in here already. So we could just drop this one right out.
Get out, yeah.
Fantastic, one down. Budget efficiencies, cost-saving measures, highlight steps taken to reduce costs while maintaining service levels. Example, renegotiated contracts, energy efficient improvements, etc. And then operational efficiencies, discuss any process improvements or technological investments that are saving money. So this was just an attempt for them to plug, this is where we've tried to cut costs, this is where we've tried to get additional money. Sort of an option for them to plug if they want to, or not. Anything we want to change on that?
Reduce expenses instead of cost.
Okay. I just love not putting an S, it's S, I always do CES instead of SES for expenses.
It might be worth maybe just you going back through and editing where appropriate, cost out and put expenses. I'm just wondering if jumping
Yeah.
back and forth between costs and expenses from
Yeah.
one paragraph to the next
Yeah,
is not really what's the word for it?
Whoa.
Well, it's in here 9 times, the word cost.
Time?
Provide clear explanations for any cost increases, that's that's notes. Okay, that's not terrible. If we go to the top one, personnel costs, oh boy, expenses.
Yeah,
Mention any initiative for improving service delivery without increasing expenses for the department goals.
Yep.
Oh, shoot. All right. Summary of operating expenses.
Expenses.
Key expense drivers. And utility expenses. All right, benefit to the department / town anticipated expense reduction instead of expense savings.
Yeah.
Reductions and anticipated operational administrative expenses. Oh, we already have expenses, so we can put.
Yeah,
I got it once.
yeah.
Okay, and that leads us to just the last 2, which are in the notes. Be transparent, provide clear explanations for any expense increased, any increases or changes in expenses from previous year. Anticipate questions on justifications for expenses, potential savings, or service impacts. Okay. So no longer do we have the word cost anywhere in here. Thank you, Dave. All right, we're almost done. So we did the budget efficiencies. Next is slide 13, impact of not fully funding the, here we go.
Well,
So this gets back into the above target budget.
Yeah, well, target budget, town manager target budget.
impact of not.
Well, but, so,
The
do we want to say impact of,
above target requests.
right, of not,
Full funding, above target request, did you say?
That's
above
what I just
target?
said, yeah. Because that's what we want to know, the ramifications if we do not, or the budget does not fund the above target requests.
Okay,
Impact of not fully funding the above target requests.
Yep.
Service reductions, detail which services or programs would be cut or reduced if the above target requests are not fully funded. And then operational impact, explain the potential consequences on staffing, community service, and service of quality, or in service quality.
And I like the word potential in there because you cannot predict.
Right,
yeah.
right. You know, you could figure out what the service reductions, the positions and the programs you have to cut, but yeah, okay. We good on that one?
Yeah,
All right, revenue sources, if applicable. Town appropriations, portion of the budget funded by the general funds. Just simple enough. I guess we don't even necessarily need to have that. Maybe we just have the other revenues, mention any external revenues, grants, user fees, federal, state aid that help the department services, fund the department services. Or no, I guess we could, no, we could say the portion of the budget that's funded by the general funds. And maybe the portion or the percentage of the total budget as well, that it that this department would, that this budget would constitute, whether it's 3% or 40% or whatever. So percentage of or departmental percentage of omnibus budget.
And have the COA coming to you with 0.5%,
I know.
or 0.05, I don't know what it is, but.
So the departmental percentage of the omnibus budget, and then portion, I guess just that is all we really need. Because after that, it's, because we know it's gonna be it's gonna be funded by appropriation, unless it's other revenues that they have, which is external revenues, grants, user fees, federal, state aid, that help fund the department's services.
I think capital planning has added, I think, they were talking about it anyway, specifically asking if it's green communities appropriate. I don't know if we want to ask for a comment or not in this process, or do we just leave that in? Because there are projects that are not necessarily capital that are appropriate for funding through green communities, especially if they're approached properly. And that's something that I think the Green Communities Committee is starting to help educate the different departments as to what is appropriate for a potential project for Green Communities funding. The only problem we're having is that that program is morphing, and it morphs faster than we can keep track of it sometimes because of the overall push, specifically lately, towards electrification and weatherization. But, you know, some of these projects going forward are going to be weatherization, and if you tie it together with another energy-saving project for the same building, then it's intimately appropriate for green communities. It's just whether or not the timing works.
I wonder, I think that might be more for green communities to handle. Because once you're gone, we're not gonna know if it's available for green communities. And I think that's certainly something that they should put forward. But I think for this one, it would just be sort of, you know, this is, not that she'll still be here unless they can convince her otherwise, but this is, Sue Doherty's chance to show how much, you know, grant money she's pulled in to run the COA and to reduce the amount of appropriation that the COA needs to function. Rather than saying, you know, you may want to look here. I would think maybe during that presentation, we would say, oh, hey, have you thought of this for a funding source? Or have you talked to our grant writing services?
Yep, don't have yet.
All right. Slide 15. What's that, Jay?
I just was thinking to myself.
Okay. Next one was challenges for the upcoming years. External factors, discuss any external challenges, example, inflation, regulatory changes, economic uncertainty that could affect the department's operations or budget needs. Good enough? Okay.
Yep.
Internal pressures, identify internal challenges, example, aging infrastructure, staffing shortages that could impact service levels.
All the above.
Right, exactly. And then a conclusion summary, or conclusion and summary. Summary of the key points, recap the budget request, emphasizing that it is designated to maintain current services. No longer that. Emphasizing that it is, or I guess just recap the budget request from a high level.
Yeah. What do you mean by high level?
Not to the granular level that we've been seeing previously. Basically just, this is, oh, geez. More of just a summary view of what their budget is. This is how much we've increased, sort of just okay, now we've talked about everything, let's just bring it all back together and say, this is what the budget is currently, this is what we need to see, this is what our requests are, to tie it all together in one last time, I guess. And rather than kind of getting into, this is what we need for this personnel position, or this is what we need for this service position.
Okay.
We can change, I have no problem not having high level in there.
No. No. Either
I think
or, it doesn't matter.
I'd be happier with just the summary of key points.
Just leave it as that?
Yeah.
Okay. Done. Oh, see. And then, I don't think we need to, I don't think we need to have to reiterate the importance of the budget.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then questions and discussion, invite questions, leave time for committee members to ask questions or raise concerns. Contact information, provide your contact detail for follow-up discussions or clarifications. Easy enough. Okay. This is where we have a chance to put definitions in. So additional notes for the presentation. Keep the slides simple, focus on high-level summaries and key data points, use visuals, charts, graphs where appropriate. Less is more. Be transparent, provide clear explanations for any increases or changes in expenses from the previous year. That's where I'm hoping we'll see this. We didn't have enough in this line, so we had to pull from this line. It's my subtle attempt at saying, please tell us that. Prepare for questions, anticipate questions on justifications for expenses, potential savings or service impacts. Detailed budget documents, please send line item spreadsheets of TM target, of the TM target budget. And what did we call them? We called them
Above target.
above target
Above
requests.
target request.
To FinCom a minimum of 7 days in advance of the scheduled presentation, including 5 to 7 years of detailed budgeting documents. Ideally, basically just give us your spreadsheets, give us your municipal, whatever it is, your municipal documents, so we can see them. Do we want to define anything further?
I'm kind of leaning towards leave that alone and see what happens.
See what the pushback is?
Edit it after the fact, after
Okay.
you see whether it worked or not.
Okay. I did not read over the first few slides, so just really quickly to make sure we have that. Finance Committee Town Department Budget Presentation Template. Slide 1, title slide, department name, presenter's name and title, presentation date, easy enough. Department overview, mission statement, summarize the department's purpose and role in the community, whatever they want to put for a mission statement. Key services provided, briefly outline the essential services the department offers. Staffing overview, number of employees, breakdown. Oh, I did already have breakdown of full-time and part-time. I guess we can
Yeah.
add an org chart.
Yes.
Do we want to keep this in this portion, or do we want to allow them to put it into the personnel portion?
I don't know, they usually show it in the beginning. They usually show the organizational chart as part of the
Okay.
overview of the department.
So then we cut this one back to just the, if any staffing changes are proposed, highlight them here. When we actually get to kind of the
Yeah.
meat of the personnel, this stays more high level and we just see, we have 10 employees, we have 500 employees. Full
Yeah.
and part-time staff, and then an org chart if useful.
Yeah, I like to see the org.
Okay,
You would say organizational chart.
what's that?
Can you spell organizational chart?
Yeah, I have it right here, organizational chart if desired. I guess I'll actually make it spelled out. Okay, and then I think that was it. Everything else we went through after. Oh, I don't think I did this one. Summary, slide 3 is the summary of the previous year's budget. Previous fiscal year, total budget, highlight the total budget in significant categories, personnel, operations, et cetera. Actual spending, briefly discuss how funds were used, and then key accomplishments, mention notable achievements or services maintained under the prior budget. I'm going to change these to XX as opposed to just limiting them to just 2 slides, because I don't think they'll be able to limit them to 1 or 2 slides. This one's through XX. And I think that should be it. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to change initially?
Looks good to me.
Perfect. Once Dave walks back upstairs, we can officially vote, I suppose. So my plan here is just to send this off to the interim town manager with a request to please send it to the department heads as well.
Yeah.
Or I guess actually I'll request of the interim town manager that I can send it out to the department heads or something. We'll figure it out so that it can get to the department heads.
Yeah.
With a request for, conversation or questions or dialogue ahead of it, if there's any questions. And then we'll go from there and see what we end up with. And hopefully this will make it a little bit more consistent between departments.
Timing-wise, is there enough time for if he chooses to, the interim town manager to review this whole document, and if he has some serious concerns before he sends it to his department heads, that he comes back with those suggested adjustments?
I think so. I think, yeah. He had asked for it, so if we vote on it tonight, I send it to him tonight, he'll have it tomorrow. He can read through it over the weekend if he wants. I doubt he'll have too many issues, but if he does have, issues, we could always just, I can work with him on the timing. If he does want to send it out immediately, we could sort of just strike something initially, and then I'll bring it back up and say, we struck this. How do we want to reorganize this or reword this? And then we can resend it out with that, but at least they'll get kind of the meat of it, hopefully at that point.
Okay.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion
No,
that we,
you-
whoops,
Hang on.
yep,
Go ahead.
Do we know how many department heads he's sending this to? Because I know we have all the big departments. What about the smaller one? How many? Are we just doing the ones we have
well, you,
listed on the,
you've got the smaller departments bunched under one department head. So it's going to in my eyes, my thought process was.
like who's doing IT?
I don't even want to answer that question.
Do we still have, I assume we still have their contract,
Do we?
right?
That's general government, so that's town manager.
But we always get a
Town manager.
presentation from IT.
Well, not always.
We did last year.
I'll let you guys chew on that one a little bit.
I mean, ideally, this would be for anybody who's going to be presenting to the finance committee. So
Right, I know
any-
we have all the big departments,
I assume so, yes.
police, fire, DPW, school,
Right,
facility,
right, exactly.
but then there's other ancillary one. Is a town manager gonna, building, land use?
Historically, yes, but I guess that's a question for whomever is going to be the town manager that does the presentations for that, if they
Yeah.
want to do
Right.
those portions. At this point, I'm fine with just having Carter
Yeah.
send it to any of his department heads that he feels he would like to send it to, with a minimum of these listed.
Okay,
I think that's appropriate. We give them that to decide and a review, and I'll cover it in my motion.
Do we want to at least run through the departments we want to send it to first, or do you want me just to use the
This is our department head presentation
request?
format,
Right, template,
format request,
okay,
and then let him disseminate it.
okay.
That's my feeling.
Jay, does that work for you?
yeah, then I guess I would just ask him about who's covering these small, or if he's gonna have a list of who's actually gonna use this and respond to it.
I will make sure that gets included in the email. We're starting a motion, I think, Dave.
Yeah, where was I?
I think it was I move.
Do you want to accept or approve, or how do you want, what word do you want in there? I move that we approve the format that we have just completed editing, and task the chair with
Template.
passing it on to the interim town manager, and authorize him to work with the interim town manager if there are some minor edits that he feels are important. How's that?
Perfect.
Second.
All right, motion's made and seconded. Any discussion?
No,
All right, roll call vote then. Mr. Simeoni?
aye,
Mr. Passios?
Aye.
Ms. Russell?
Aye.
And an aye from myself. We have a template. Thank you very much. That was not,
thank you for doing that work, Evan.
oh, no problem. Wasn't terrible, but it was work. All right. So that brings us to the MART taxi and livery grant update. I do have an update from MART that the question about whether or not, I think it was Mr. Menard that brought it up, whether they would allow for anyone in Lunenburg to be transported to Emerson Hospital has been approved. We're not exactly
good.
sure of what the cost is going to be just yet, I guess. They're still working that out. But I believe we will know that. I think Carter's pretty confident we'll know that by the special town meeting. So that request is still likely to be $20,000 to be found somewhere, which would carry the program through until the end of the fiscal year. And then we would ideally have that, we'd figure out what we want to do in the spring, whether we want to continue it or whatnot. But the program is officially ended. We are just continuing to subsidize it ourselves at this point.
And that agreement included mileage over the original limit,
Only for Emerson.
only for Emerson?
Correct.
Okay.
It's up to 20 miles unless you're going to Emerson.
Okay.
And then it's Emerson,
Right.
there and back.
Yep.
And the rate, I believe, will be going up. It's currently $3, $4, and $6. And I think it's going up to $4, $5, and $7 or something like that per trip. So still very reasonable.
Yep.
And hopefully the state redoes that, because that's, I think, a really good program. Otherwise, I don't have any other updates on that one. It was just the good news. Split tax rate discussion and presentation. So I went forward and I presented it to the budget task force for a painstakingly, I think it was an hour and a half presentation. So if you really want to sleep, listen to that presentation. What it basically all boiled down to, and I did not show the committee this one slide, which was sort of my thesis at the end of it. So I just want to show this one slide, not all 50 of them that I showed the other night. But this is, so the argument has always been for the reason for not going to a split tax rate is that if our CIP is too low, or our commercial, industrial, and personal property percentage of the value of evaluation is too low, will drive businesses out of town. And while that certainly still may be true, I want to see the data that says that this is what happens. There are not many communities in Massachusetts, to be fully honest and candid, that have a split tax rate with CIP value percentages under 15%. We would be a minority community in that regard. That said, I looked at what I was focusing on was two things. So the CIP value in millions of dollars is on the x-axis, on this y-axis. Oops, let me use my little pointer. It makes it a little easier. On the left, on the y-axis over here, and the residential and open spaces value in billions is on this side. The kind of brownish curve is the CIP, the greenish one is the residential. What it basically shows is that from 2002, so this is all, or 2003, I believe, fiscal year 2003, through fiscal year 2024, the CIP value in Lunenburg has increased about $3.5 million per year, on average, over the course of the time. Our our residential has increased by about $36 million per year, on average as well, over the same years. With Maynard, looking at the same spread, their CIP value increased by $850,000. So there is a difference. They did not increase as quickly as we did. They do increase about the same, 32 million per year for residential. So what I did do though is I wanted to look at kind of this is from 2002, so this is a very large data set. So I backed it down to 10 years. So I started in 2014 and looked at a 10-year spread instead. And if you look at 10 years, it fits a curve a little bit better. I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't starting here and saying, look at how much they've grown, because that feels a little disingenuous to look at just, I think I called it the hockey stick equation. But if you look at it from a 10-year spread, Lunenburg's CIP has increased by about $6 million per year on average, and our residential has increased by about $100 million a year, which is a ton of money every year. Maynard's CIP has increased by about $4.8 million per year, and their residential has increased by about $86 million per year. So it's much more in line that their residential, or their CIP has increased similar to ours over the past decade. So it's not as good, that's certainly true. It is about a 25% less of a growth than we're seeing. But at the same time, it's not decreasing. And if you look specifically since 2020, they have been really increasing. They've been really putting money into, I believe that's the shops at Maynard on the old digital footprint at 53 acres, where they put in a ton of housing and shops and all of that.
Yep.
So that was the entire gist of it. It was just those two little graphs to say, at least to have the conversation with the committee of, let's look at the data from the other communities if it exists that says, no, we tried it and we failed hard, and I don't want that to happen. I also don't want to put too much on the backs, but I think the discussion is at least warranted. And that was pretty much it. This was the only thing that I didn't show the committee 2 weeks ago. So that was the only update that I had for this one. Nothing extravagant.
think at the end of the day, you know, as much as the sky's gonna fall if you do that mentality really is not, I can't imagine it would happen.
Right.
Yes, there might be some departure, but, I guess my only other question is, what does it accomplish once you make that? Is it a shift in burden, or is it,
Strictly a shift in burden.
okay,
It becomes nothing more than a shift in burden.
But how much?
It depends upon what your CIP shift is.
yeah, what you set that rate at?
How is that decided?
The Board of Assessors, from what I understand.
Is there a formula or?
So it is, the maximum in the state is 1.75, a 1.75 shift. So basically that means you take the residential rate and multiply it by 1.75, and that's your commercial rate, your CIP rate. That's the maximum. On DLS's website, they list what the maximum can be, and Lunenburg's been listed at 1.5 since 2003. So I did actually, because I wasn't doing anything else, I calculated out exactly what it would look like. And this is what a shift looks like for fiscal year 25. Oh geez, that's way too much.
What?
There we go. So blue or red on, or orange on top here is CIP, blue is residential, and it's basically as the shift goes, a 1.0 shift, which is what we're at, there's obviously no difference. 1.1, you're shifting $267,000 off of the residents and onto commercial. And that increases up to a 1.5 where you're shifting 1.3 million off of the residents and onto the commercial. If you go to 1.75, I don't even think I didn't even calculate, I didn't even bother calculating out that far because it's millions of dollars at that point. And I feel like there is a limit. So this is basically what you'd be looking at is somewhere between 250,000 to about 1.3 million, depending. And you can choose anything in between. It's not like you're limited to integer numbers or, you know, single decimal points numbers. But when you start playing around with that, it's kind of interesting. You can start sort of looking at what happens if you do an override simultaneous to a split tax rate and what the average tax bill looks like at different CIP shifts with different override numbers. So this might be a little bit tougher to see. There we go. But this is on the $481,471 average house in Lunenburg. Their current tax bill is $6,788.74. So that's a 1.0 CIP shift and no override. If you just do a $3 million override, that house bill jumps up to $7,432. That's a very large increase. At the same time, if you go all the way out to a 1.75 shift on a $3 million override, that bill goes from $67.88 to $69.99. So it's not as drastic of an increase because it's borne on the backs of the commercial, industrial, and personal property. If you look at the $1.5 million one, it's actually a tax break from $67.88 to $6,696. So it's actually technically a small tax break. And there's a $1.5 million override that takes place at the same time. So I think the Board of Assessors certainly needs to talk about it, and they always do. It's always up for discussion with them. But the Select Board eventually chooses whether they're going to split the rate in November. So that, I think, is the first part of the conversation that needs to happen, is they need to decide whether or not they're going to split it out or not, so. Not sure. I mean, the other option is you do a 1.75 shift and no override, and that house drops down from $6,788 to $6,392. They get a $400 tax break. But you put that's a lot of burden on the CIP. I mean, that's a ton of burden. It's like $4 million or like $3 million on the CIP itself, which is a lot to bear when it's only worth about $200 million. Additionally, there is no break that can be given to small businesses. It does not exist. So that is a big, big issue. The break that is available is to the landowner. But at the same time, it's the landowner that's paying the taxes. It's not the business that's renting the building that the land is on that's gonna pay the property taxes. It's gonna be paid for by the owner of the property itself.
But personal property is included in that too, right?
But it's personal property that's outside of residential property.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, our personal property, I think, totals up to,
So that would be borne by the business.
correct. But at that point, so if it does, well, maybe, I'm not sure, that's a good question.
Because the property.
Personal
owner's not
property
gonna-
is commercial.
Property owner's not gonna own the equipment that a company is operating on his property,
Right.
leases the property. It's not his equipment, it's the company's equipment.
So if that's the case, then I would expect them to be able to apply for a small business grant, exemption. If it's under X amount of employees, which would be good then.
Personal property is the commercial.
Yes, it's lumped into the commercial, industrial, and personal property, so I believe, yes, it is the personal property related to commercial and industrial.
Excuse me.
It's the personal property of the business.
Correct.
Which, just remember also, for all my farmer friends, that includes farms. Farm equipment.
Does.
Does it?
Yes.
Farm is not exempt.
Oh, yeah. They found out the hard way when the town hired a company to go around and assess and update
They-
personal property inventory. The farms got clobbered because there had been a local assessor that kind of gave the farmers a break on their equipment, and they got hit hard.
Okay. And again,
Just for information.
yeah, no, that's all this is. I have no
Yeah.
specific agenda here. I'm just looking for, I know we're gonna need more money. Where do we get it from?
Yeah.
The residents really don't wanna pay it. That's- How else can we make money but not actually make money? Jay, you were gonna say something, I think?
How does, so where now does personal property tax come into play?
What's that?
The personal property tax, where does that come into play? Is that in addition to,
So personal property in FY '24 was $64 million in town.
That was the revenue
wow,
created?
that's,
No, that's assessed value.
Assessed value. okay.
Assessed value
Okay.
only.
what,
Yep.
So revenue created on that specifically at 1410, 14.1 times 64914.63, $915,000. So yeah, I think I certainly need more understanding of exactly what the breakdown is. And I'm very curious to know what the breakdown in town is of corporate owned versus family and Lunenburg owned. And the sort of distribution of who owns the land. Is it owned by people that don't even live in Lunenburg and they're just renting it out to businesses? Or is it, the new Proctor complex that's up the street that's owned by the Proctors? That's on them entirely. That's, you know, an important thing to know. I think there's a lot of missing information here, for sure, that the Board of Assessors can fill in. So I will reach back. I have not heard from them again. I sent them some questions. I haven't heard back from them, so I'll reach back out to them again and see if I can get some more answers. But that was about all I had for that.
Is it any tier levels in commercial in the way they're taxed?
Any what level in the way it's taxed?
You know, tier levels, you know, for small business versus large businesses.
So, from what I know is that there is a small business exemption that can be applied for. But the way that the interim town manager explained it was that any granted exemption goes to the land owner,
Yeah,
the property owner. But I take property owner to be as well the business.
it could be.
Right, so it's gonna probably be split. You'd get you'd probably get, I guess if you're applying for a small business exemption, this is an assumption, which I'll check to make sure, but if you're applying for a small business exemption on personal property, you as the business owner would likely be the one awarded the exemption. But if you were applying for it if you were the landowner of a
Yeah.
small business applying for the small business exemption, then you as the landowner would be getting an exemption. And I don't know if you can double up the exemptions on that. Like I said, there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, yeah.
But that is the only existing in all of Massachusetts statute exemptions, which is really unfortunate, because it does not give any help to or assistance to small businesses, really. Makes it really hard to start a business.
But we have a lot of big business in town. We get that Lunenburg Central.
Yeah, it's completely, but at the same time, we're making tons of money on that without having any other expenses.
Is that still empty?
100% empty as far as I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if business is moving in there should be, we should get something from personal
Correct. Yep, right now, we're strictly collecting on the commercial
Real estate.
property.
Yeah,
Yeah. I tried to talk my former employer into that being the perfect expansion building for them in their New England operations, but nobody would listen. Typical corporate,
Yeah.
you know. No, we got a property that we don't fit in, but we're gonna stay here.
Yeah, I would like to know a lot more, because I certainly, I don't even know who owns the property that Walmart in Hannaford sits on. I imagine it's probably not Walmart in Hannaford, or Hannaford.
No, there's a development or management company, I think, that owns that. Jay, do you remember, because it used to be on the signs going in. I don't know, I haven't
Yeah, I
paid
don't know.
attention to the sign in years.
that might just be the management company, but not the actual owner.
It's true.
Oh, okay, yep. Contracted services.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those are if those are the companies that are taking the majority of these taxes, then I'm sorry, but okay. I don't feel bad. If it's falling on Walmart and
No.
corporate,
Right.
I really do not mind taxing them much higher than I mind taxing,
Heating.
Hilltop, for example. But, yes. All right, any other discussion on that one for tonight? I don't think we have a town manager search committee update unless anybody knows anything. I don't.
Haven't watched any meetings.
I
this
haven't
week.
either. I already gave the budget task force update. That was basically, I talked. Grant writing services, I am very concerned that we are gonna get to annual town meeting, still having $50,000 appropriated for grant writing services, and not a single person has reached out to anybody. And I'm not quite sure whose responsibility that is to get people to reach out or how to start the process.
Well, the only comment I'll make is I tried,
You did?
and it resulted in no action from one committee that should be putting a proposal forward, but is not, and instead is going to town meeting for funding.
So I think, go ahead, Jay.
No, I think it was a good idea. I think we just don't know how to implement it.
The problem is nobody driving the bus. We bought the bus,
Right.
but nobody
Right.
driving it.
That's kind of exactly what I'm getting at. We don't have
Yeah.
a template. We don't have a list of preferred
Yep,
services, service providers, or anything. We don't have a way of contacting, who to contact, who to talk to. We just have money and a line. That I worry is going to be absorbed very quickly into a different budget line item in FY '26 if it doesn't show that it can bear fruit.
the town manager should be handling it, but that, we have an or permanent
Right.
town manager.
Yeah, that needed to be vetted as soon as the fiscal year started and, you know, departments made aware of how, what they were required to bring forward to, you know, potentially tap those funds. And I did weigh that out, like I said, to one committee, and I think it would work well that way, but so far it hasn't. That's why I asked Carter with, I think the last meeting, has anybody come forward with a request?
Nope. Nobody yet, that I know of at least.
Right.
But I don't think it's gonna work that way. I thought the whole purpose of it was for a grant writing services company to find us the grants.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, but Jay, you gotta have some idea of what you're trying to fund so that you can bring the appropriate company forward to, through contracted services, to go after those grants for you.
Well, I look at it as a municipality, we know the departments that we have, and that the grant writing services should be familiar with what municipal needs are with police, fire, DPW, schools, and they should be able to provide you a list of, here's all the grants that have come up. Which ones do you want to apply for? What do you need? Because there may be grants out there that we don't know exist to even ask for.
Yeah, that's the part I'm not familiar with.
The town that I work in,
Yeah, what you're
Fire
saying is
department.
that there must be entities out there that do general grant writing for municipality needs.
They do
yeah, I
exist.
think there must be companies out there that must follow the federal government, state government, and know where these grants are or when they pop up.
And that was actually the intent, because we were talking about all the money coming out of the federal government filtering down to the state
Yes.
level,
Yes,
and that was gonna be grants.
Yeah.
And somebody had to be familiar with the process
yeah,
and be on top of when those grants open. And I can't believe there isn't
Yeah.
a business entity out there that's not doing that. I mean, there's money to be made doing that.
Sounds like you have a job ready. So I had brought up in July 11th that there's a company called Bailey Boyd Associates in Situate, Massachusetts, that are grant specialists. They are a boutique firm specializing in community development. They have been successfully funding and implementing community development activities for over 30 years. They do community housing, infrastructure projects, compliance, project management, economic development, sustainable employment opportunities, and it's all grant specialists. Our national reputation for aggressive grant work, including research, writing, and project management, places Bailey Boyd Associates at the top of community development consultants with over 140 million in funds secured. Better Business Association, or BBA, consistently helps clients meet their project goals. That was a 30-second Google search that I did, and they're in
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
So see, that's where you've got to have the client goals developed in advance, and then you hire this company to help you
Realize the goal.
realize those goals. Yes, exactly.
But do you need to put an RFP out for that?
Depends on how much money you spend
You have
initially.
to find out what their fee schedule is.
Right.
We have $50,000. And each grant, I think, would be different depending on the need.
Yep.
Some grants may be simple and some may be more complicated or require considerably more data.
I guess we're looking for basically a person that wants to take on the task. Because I think we do, I think we need to have somebody that knows, I agree with Jay. I think we need to have a company that knows sort of, here's what we do, here's what let's look at you and say, your community, we've told them, we can show them what our grant writing services letter was that you and Ms. Tavares drafted, and say, these are our departments, here's what we're looking at. We have parks projects coming up, we have school projects coming up, we have a building infrastructure problem in town. We need some grant money to start moving on stuff. We have a $50,000 line. We would like to have a nice return on that investment. Are you able to do anything for us? And then let them do the work and say, yes, we have X, Y, and Z grants that we think you'd be fine for.
What just came through my mind was, is it feasible? And with a smaller, smaller committee, doesn't matter. If, seeing as the finance committee pressed to get that line item, if the interim town manager were on board for the finance committee to initiate and execute that first phase.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, as chair, that's doable?
Sure. Only takes a phone call.
Yeah. Yeah. But I foresee, a phone call and maybe convincing them to come in and give a basic presentation on what they could offer.
Mm-hmm.
And that might trigger requests from department heads or however that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm. In other words, see if one, they would be willing or able to, knowing what our line item is, and then two, if they would come in and have a sit down with the department heads and us or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Sure.
Could have a workshop type of thing that involves
Right.
all the users.
Right.
All the potential users. Boy, I'm lining up work for you guys.
You really are. You offer consulting services, right?
I mean, that's the only way I see it getting off the ground, to tell you the truth.
And that's what I've realized as well, is without someone to champion the effort,
Yeah.
it's just gonna
Yeah.
sit there,
Yeah.
which means in FY '26, it's gone.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I can reach out to Carter, and I will call the Boyds again. Anything else on grant writing services?
No, I think
All
that's
right.
it for now.
What departments do we want to consolidate? Dave, do you want to last hurrah
Yeah.
at consolidation of departments and services?
Well, you know, what's in my head is again, the fact that the town needs to grow and grow its departments. I'm not so, it's a consolidation, but it's not a money saver, what I have in mind. And that is that, you know, let's see if I can pull all this out in a short period of time. I'll start with facilities only because that one's clear in my head. I feel that this town is big enough now so that it needs a facilities administrator. The next tier under the facilities administrator are the two positions we presently have. And then you need a workforce under them, which they kind of have. They don't have a sufficient workforce, but they kind of have a workforce. But I think, again, that needs to be a grown, to fit our needs type of department, standalone. And that's probably just the first phase of that, and there'll be a need for growth there probably in the next 5 years, if we continue growing the way we are. The other thing is, I think there should be some shift of, I gotta say this correctly. Shift of responsibilities within the DPW, present DPW structure. In that, if you're gonna have facilities, actually it's called facilities and grounds. Okay, if you want to, the potential growth down the road would be to separate grounds from facilities. I don't think that's appropriate yet. But if you grow the facilities department to an administrator, what are their positions right now? Facilities directors, aren't they?
Maybe.
Okay.
Not
I'm
sure.
sorry if I'm getting the terminology wrong, but you get the point. You've got an administrator that's 100% administrative, and then you have the two positions that we have now.
Operational.
Jay just had it, I didn't hear. what he said.
Operational.
Operational, okay. And then your, as many of us call them, worker bees,
Yeah,
okay?
the labor force.
So you've
Well,
got that.
Yeah.
But down the road, or even you could do it now, but be thinking down the road that you're gonna separate grounds from facilities. And I think cemeteries should be rolled into that, that portion. And cemeteries could be rolled into the grounds management purview now, as far as I'm concerned. DPW shouldn't be involved in grounds. Cemeteries are grounds. Yes, you need an administrator of some sort to handle dealing with the public, and, you know, there's a lot more that goes on besides mowing the lawn over there and everything like that. And I think those two parts of that operation need to be separated. You shouldn't have a groundskeeper taking care of administrative tasks in a department like that. If that makes sense. Okay, so you move that towards facilities and grounds right now with the intent that down the road it goes with grounds on its own, but it's all the same type of workflow. It's mowing lawns, it's taking care of grounds, it's trees and trimming, and, you know, that's all over town. So you have a department that does that, including school grounds. And that's the big nut to crack. We have a turf war, and that's all I can call it, is a turf war. Because no matter what you propose to merge anything between the town side and the school department, it's met with absolutely not. We're not giving up our turf. As much as, I'm sure there's people sitting at home right now, if they're listening, or they'll see it on this tape, no, it's not that way. Yes, it is. And I don't know how you break that cycle. Other cities and towns do it, I know a former member of the select board that just retired very recently, and he was in a town in Massachusetts where the DPW and/or facilities, I'm not sure exactly how they were set up, but they took care of all buildings in town, including school buildings. And they took care of all grounds, including school grounds. This separation is ridiculous. The schools should be involved, my feeling, this is my statement, personal statement. The schools should be involved in educating children. And the town should be involved in maintaining the buildings and the grounds. That's how I feel it should be, especially as we've grown into a more, closer to a city than a little village. So I think that's where it's not, inherently, there should be efficiencies in doing that, but not necessarily, and definitely not a cost savings. But that feeds in again to my adamant feeling that we've not grown to where we should be anyway. And that's what that accomplishes. And there are other little areas that we could probably work on, but those are the biggest areas where there's potential for, consolidating similar operations into one entity. So I'm glad I'm not here after tonight.
Yeah, I can see it sort of from both sides in terms of at least the grounds with sports requirements and lining and all that stuff. But at the same time, I mean, I don't think there's any reason why our facilities department can't also handle, or a combination of facilities department can't handle the logistics as well.
Yeah, well, we're in the day and age where you contract out 80 to 90% of that anyway. Even the school district contracts out some of their grounds work,
Right.
you know? I mean, the concern is, well, we want to have control over who's on the property. Well, you build that into the contracts. That's absolutely required of any contracted service that comes onto a school property. They're required to have their employees vetted. So that argument gets thrown right out the window.
Yeah, I think it's certainly, I would love to see the conversation happen. I really would.
Same with IT. I think done properly, we go back to a townwide IT department, and it will work better than anything we've ever had, but the key word is done properly.
That would require another merger though. Because the schools are on Google and the town is on Microsoft.
So?
I'm just saying it would
Yeah,
require, again, it's
yeah,
not
I mean,
cost savings.
no
We won't have
migration,
to merge.
no migration is easy.
Right.
Lunenburg's gonna have to, the town side's gonna have to do a migration anyway in the near future, because Munis is, either they're gonna have to do a migration with Munis to an upgraded software, which they're already aware of, or they bite the bullet and they do a transition to a totally different platform. So we know what we've had for problems up to this point with Munis. Bite the bullet and do the transition. Instead of doing it with something we already know doesn't work, do that migration into something that does work.
Yeah. Jay, you were going to say something?
I was.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't agree with merging the IT departments. I think if the school's on Google, we're Microsoft, they should be able to stay that way. The school has so much more IT issues to deal with than on the town side. And I think there should be a separation.
But why couldn't we be an offshoot of the school's IT department? If we have a lot less need, then we should be able
Because I
to
think
be a
it-
piece of their operate
Yeah.
their IT department.
Because I think it comes down to one, budgeting issues, because the school department has their own budget that we have no say over. And then it also comes down to, staffing. It's how much, time are they gonna be able to provide on the town side versus the school side? Because I think the school side, just with the amount, the staff and the kids that they have, they just have so much more IT need.
Yeah, that could certainly be a limiting factor, for sure. Having budgetary constraints on the school side, where right now they have autonomy over sort of how they handle snow and ice, how they handle mowing, and where they fall on the list of prioritizations. And if you conglomerate that into a full townwide, I could understand concerns about, do we fall off the list and do we lose some of the work that we've had done, and or the speed at which we get work done, or and whatnot. Plus budgeting, if the budget gets cut down, does that come from everywhere across the board evenly, or who's in charge of the budgeting of it at that point? It certainly is, it becomes messy, but I don't think it's unsolvable.
All I know is there's other towns in this state that do it with absolutely no problem and function very well.
Yeah.
Well, I think some of those other towns might be better staffed too. Because.
Well, yeah, yeah,
towns.
and that plays back to what I said earlier about we have stagnated our service departments.
Yep.
With no growth, no increase in funding, per se, to keep up with the needs that we've grown into.
Yeah, we've constrained our departments to the point, to as far as they can be constrained under Prop 2.5. We cannot constrain them any further. Otherwise, we're gonna be saying, sorry, you can only mail out 50 warrants instead of, 5,000. Or come pick it up instead, or it's all digital. It's just, we're getting to the point where we have to count pennies. Our departments have to count pennies rather than, just operating as they're supposed to. So. Okay. Anything else on that one?
No, I've stirred up enough bees nests, I'm sure, for now.
All right, no minutes. Committee reports. Any committee reports to report on?
Green Communities and School was supposed to have a meeting this morning. It turned out to be, I'm not sure exactly what happened, something to do with links and stuff. But the update basically is that they're still pushing forward to put in a grant application in the next couple weeks, with the hopes that the mini splits phase 2 for the primary school will be the major project in that application, including, and then on top of that, 2 police cruisers at $5,000 each. And I forget the dollar amount. It's maybe it doesn't come out of Green Communities. It's going to be applying for 2, training for 2 people for business, building management systems. We did that a few years ago. John Wanda took it, and I don't think we ever used the second one because we never had anybody, but the 2 facilities directors are planning, I believe if we do get that, they'll be participating in that. So that's it at this point. We have a meeting coming up on the 6th or 7th of October.
Okay. Any other committee reports to pass on?
No.
Me neither. Topics for future meetings. Now's your chance, Dave.
How to get a $3.2 million override pushed through.
3.2?
Yeah.
We started off at 1.5, and then
know.
went to 2, and now it's 3.2?
Wasn't it the one back in, the one that we've talked about the last time they tried and failed? It was huge.
I don't know what the actual
I
number
think it was. Jay, do you remember, wasn't that a $3 million attempt? Because I remember when we put the
Was that to do
spreadsheets. Go ahead.
Was that to do the buildings?
No, it had
How long
nothing to
ago?
do with the new school building. It was an override for townwide operations or something like that. I don't remember exactly. But,
Was that under Bill Gussis when he had a plan to do, was like the school, the public facilities and the police or something? It was a big number.
yeah. And I remember when the spreadsheet came out on that, like we did the breakdowns on how it was gonna affect the tax bill. It was extrapolated out over 5 years
Yeah.
with the 2.5
Yeah.
multiplier and all that stuff. And the number 3 years down was just out of this world. And
Yeah.
that's what blew it out of the water.
Yep.
But, on the other hand, if you can't find revenue sources from anywhere else, that's what's needed. I'm not saying
Yeah,
it's
the town was not sufficient.
palatable, but that's what's needed.
Yeah. Yeah, when we have the bulk of our revenue coming in is from tax levy, that's, kind of have to move along with it, and that's what overrides and underrides are designed for.
It's either that or drill a hole in the ground and go far enough so we hit oil on the other side of the world. Bring it up in Lunenburg.
Any other topics for future meetings? I think we have plenty to go with so far.
Yeah.
Perfect, none. Important dates. The MMA and Association of Town Finance Committee meeting is happening on the 2nd of November in Sharon at the Community Center from 9 a.m. to 2:15. I will be attending, I believe. I recommend anybody else who wants to go. It's a good time to go. I think it's certainly helpful. It's specifically for the finance committees, so.
Yeah. Second to MMA, that's a great meeting to go to.
It's no longer MMA. It's Connect 351.
Oh, that's right. I did see that. I'm sorry.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
now Connect 351, and it's happening at the Seaport Hotel, the Omni Seaport.
Yeah.
So, and that'll be in January. Other one is we have special town meeting at 5 o'clock on the 12th of November at the Lunenburg Middle High School Auditorium.
5 o'clock?
5 o'clock, that's what everything keeps on, I keep on seeing 5 o'clock posted from the town and everything else, which is new to me.
Yeah.
That's an odd time. It really is.
That way maybe we'll end at 10.
Problem with 5 o'clock is that you're not gonna have people getting out of work early
Really,
enough
yeah.
We'll
to
end
get
at
there.
10.
Yep. I'm gonna check really quickly, just because that seems.
No, I think you're right. I remember this discussion a few weeks ago, somewhere.
All right, so select board special town meeting, 5 PM. It's listed on the town calendar as 5 PM. We'll see. I don't see an agenda yet.
Well, if it's a nice evening, I'll sit by my fire pit and, although that's not live televised, that's recorded, right? Town meetings?
They tried to live televise it. It wasn't able to, I don't believe. From the select board, to all interested parties in accordance with the town charter, Article 2, Section 2.2 to 5, special meetings, the select board opened the warrant, blah, 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 of articles on August 13th, 2024 for a special town meeting scheduled for Tuesday, November 12th, 2024 at 5 PM at the Lunenburg Middle High School Auditorium. There you go. It's official. So, yes, that will be on the 12th at 5 PM. Otherwise, our upcoming meetings, we have one on the 10th. Is anybody other than Dave unable to make it on the 10th? Jay, do you think you'll be okay? Okay,
10th of October?
10th of October, yes.
Yeah, I should be.
Okay, we're now at the point where I have to double check with everybody. What about the 17th of October, if it turns out we need to have a meeting to finish up our votes for special town meeting?
Then an additional meeting?
Possibly. I want to talk to Carter first, just to see, because we're only going to have the 10th to discuss, vote on, and summarize our votes for the warrant.
Okay.
So ideally, no, but realistically, probably yes. Maybe we just move the 24th meeting to the 17th and not have the 24th or something. I'm fine with that. And then the last one will be the 7th, right before the special town meeting. So we'll go over that one at that point. Let's see, is there any public comment from the public? I just realized I didn't record the meeting, so thankfully they recorded. Otherwise we have to do that whole thing again. All right, seeing none, any public comment from the committee?
Yeah, just a public service announcement. I hope I get this right because I meant to have it up in front of me. The Lunenburg High School Alumni Association is sponsoring the annual alumni lunch on Sunday, October 20th at the Bull Run. Tickets are still available. Please reach out to the Alumni Association for tickets. And it's usually a pretty good time, and that's homecoming weekend, so there'll hopefully be a lot of alumni in town, and nice networking to get to see people you haven't seen for a while. Thank you.
And also congratulations, Dave.
Yeah, I didn't feel it was
Yeah.
appropriate for me to mention that.
What is it that you're getting the
Alumnus of the Year Award.
Alumnus of the Year award, so congratulations. Yes, exactly.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
Being honored along with Lance May is
Yeah.
something that is a real privilege to me. Lance was in my sister's class, my oldest sibling, and, you know, what he did for the town and the Republican Party in this area is just incredible. He worked, you know, he had so much energy, and he was on the go all the time. So I feel really honored to be honored along with him at the same event.
Excellent. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I will happily take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Mr. Simeoni.
Aye.
Mr. Passios.
Aye.
Ms. Russell.
Aye.
And an aye from myself. It is 10:25, so much for a short meeting. We are adjourned. Thank you,
Good luck,
everyone.
David.
Thanks, Jay.